Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 6. I'm going to be running out of fingers soon of the MMA on the Island podcast. My name is Joe Frescott, joined alongside, as always, Ada Williams and the main man, Bob, here, who decided, you know what? It's summer season, it's cut season. I'm not wearing a shirt today. And honestly, good on you, Bob. Good on you.
I will say, though, when Bob and we first met, he was a lot more shredded than he was. Now you guys can start to see a little bit of the gut. The chest doesn't look as muscular. And I don't know what's going on with Bob. He's been slacking this summer, and we're gonna talk about that when this podcast ends.
I mean, I think he looks good. He looks good. Maybe he looked better in his prime, but Bob's been through a lot. He's seen a lot.
Yeah,
Nonetheless, we have lots to discuss as always, and it starts with UFC on ABC5. Topuria Emmett, which ended up being a really fantastic card all around. We had some really great action in the prelims. You got to talk about that Peak and Mariscal absolute barn burner. Not sure how Peak survived that fight, but what a contest nonetheless between two guys with tremendous heart. And Randy Brown's decision over Turman. I was impressed with how Turman fought in that fight. Randy Brown, everyone coming in was very excited to see him return. And Turman, although he did lose the fight, I thought he impressed me more than the likes of Brown, honestly, the way he was able to stay in it. But in terms of the main, before we get into the main card, we'll start with the featured prelim of the night, which featured a ranked fighter in number 11, Neil Magny, going up against Mr. Rowe, and that was a fight that was very close, was extremely close. It ended up in a split decision, which Neil Magny ended up squeaking out. Looks like we got a water bottle down here to start the show, but all is well. And, taken away from that fight, I thought Neil Magny, I think he proved why, just how much of a crafty veteran he is. And, because his work in the clinch and his ability to avoid a lot of what Rowe does best when you look at, the striking and the boxing. Because we saw early in that fight, Magny was down. I think he clearly lost that first round. And he knew that he couldn't just stand and straight box with Philip Rowe, because it wasn't going to happen. So he used the clinch and he was able to stay out of Phil's boxing range, and I think you got to give Neil Magny credit for that. Was it the most impressive win in the world? Absolutely not. I was not impressed. But that's kind of the trend with Neil Magny. He's not somebody who wins in impressive fashion. I think he set the record with that win with the most decisions in UFC history. Did he? Decision wins in UFC history.
I know that he's increasing his record for most welterweight wins, but I didn't know it was most.
I think it's something along the lines.
Why am I not?
I don't know why the number 19 sticking out at me. If I find it, I'll throw the graphic up. But I'm pretty sure that he set some sort of record for decision wins. And
it's all right. Bilal will catch up to that very soon, guys. Stay tuned.
Bilal Muhammad will forever be catching strays on the pod. But, for Phil Rowe, he looked great in that first round when he was boxing. But then he kind of got away from it. And I just think Neil Magny outsmarted him personally. But he's a guy that I really like. I think he's got great hands, and I'd like to see his development, like to see him fight and make a quick turnaround, because he really didn't take too much damage in that loss to Neil Magny, and it's a loss that I don't think anyone's taken away from him. I could very well see him, although I think Magny did win the fight. I think that he took control of the last 2 rounds. I wouldn't mind seeing I wouldn't have mind if Rowe did end up coming out victorious. So in that instance, I think Phil Rowe should make a quick turnaround. It didn't seem like he took too much damage. And I'd like to see him fight a guy that I just mentioned that fought in a fight that he did win, and he did look good, but not impressive and at the level that many people tout him as. I'd like to see him just fight Randy Brown. I think it'd be easy matchmaking, book those two together. And then for Neil Magny, later this July, just 2 weeks away, you got Jack Della Mandolina, who I freaking love. That dude's a beast.
He's a stud.
He's a beast.
He beat Randy Brown in Brown's last fight. Prior to this one, he beat him.
Yeah, and he's a beast. And that was a fight that I think he was the underdog in. I think Della Mandolina.
Mandolina was the underdog?
I'm almost positive that people coming in like, oh, Randy Brown's going to wipe this guy. And then Mandolina, the smaller fighter, came in. And did he finish him?
The first round?
He finished him, yes. I'm remembering correctly. Let's go. Memory serving me right here today on the pod to start. That's how you know, because And, I got Aiden as the fact checker here because that man knows all. I like him versus he's versus Sean Brady. I like Neil Magny to fight the loser of that. That way he'd be fighting probably below his rank. I think it'd be around the same. I think Mandolina wins, then Sean Brady would probably be in that 10 realm. And then if Mandolina loses, then he would probably stay at 14, 15.
Yeah, I like that Rowe and Brown matchup that you mentioned because, especially watching this fight with Rowe and Magny coming to a split decision, that proves that, Rowe isn't that far off from the top 15 fight.
For sure.
And Brown, although he did get knocked out against Madalena in his most recent fight prior to this one back in February, Brown shows that he's a borderline 16 or 20 contender as well. So, let them both fight. The winner of that maybe get another shot at the top 15 in the near future. End of the year, beginning of 24. So, good call on Joe for that potential matchup.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I think that it does make sense for all aspects, and and looking at Neil Magny, just gonna talk about him for a second. It just feels like, I don't know, like he's I think he's a good fighter, but he's somebody that I don't think fans are ever gonna be excited to see him fight. I know he headlined a card a few years ago, a fight night. I'm not sure if he won or lost. I forget who that was against. My memory.
He was on the co-main of UFC 283 with against Gilbert Burns.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that was a co-main.
Yeah, or if not, it was like the third fight. It was right there. But
mentioning the decision thing you mentioned.
Uh-huh.
So Neil Magny, his most recent win that wasn't a decision was against Daniel Rodriguez, which was November of last year, and before that, his most recent finish was in 2018 against Santiago Ponzinibbio. Everything else, he either won or lost by decision. So, and 28 wins. He has a total of 11 finishes.
Yeah, 17 of those going to decision. I think that was the number that I was looking at. 17 decision wins. Just crazy. And he's a veteran. You gotta give him props because at the end of the day, you're fighting to win. So if the way and avenue for you to win is not entertaining, is not flashy for the fans, that's not your problem as a fighter, honestly. No. So I can't, as much as you wanna clown Neil Magny for being kind of a decision merchant at this point of his career, I gotta give credit where credit's due because he's a fighter at the end of the day, and it's a tough sport, and to stay winning in the top 15 is difficult, especially I think he's 36, 37?
35.
Yeah, 35. So just
still though.
Yeah, but still, he's getting up there. So it's a tough thing, but give credit where credit's due. Neil Magny did get the victory, although I think Phil Rowe impressed me in that first round. I think he's a guy that will be knocking on the door of the top 15 very soon.
Absolutely.
But next, got to go to the main card and got to start with a fight. What a banger of a fight to start the main card off.
Absolutely.
Brandon Allen versus Bruno Silva. And this was a fight that I was very excited to see. Brandon Allen coming in, I think he came into the fight ranked
11. Oh, no, 13.
13.
Sorry, 13.
He moved up to 11 after his submission victory in round 1. And what a dominant round 1 it was.
He's good. He's good.
Yeah.
A lot of people like to knock him out, or they like to talk crap because he lost to Curtis. I almost said Curtis Blades again. Chris Curtis and Sean Strickland. Those were his most two recent losses in the UFC. And, obviously, Strickland's not really known for his finishes as well as Chris Curtis. Well, no, Curtis is a big finisher. But those two guys finishing him recently, people like to say Allen's not this, Allen's not that. But let's just talk about Brendan Allen for a second. He's on a 5-fight win streak. Yep. I believe 4 out of those 5 fights or finishes. I think they could be all 5. I'm not too sure. I'm just talking this off the top of my head. But, taking this fight against Bruno Silva, an unranked opponent, and just dominating the way he did. Bruno did, he did show some promise on the feet at the beginning of the fight, the beginning of the round, because it only lasted a round.
Yeah.
But, at the end of the fight, Allen, when he finished with that rear naked choke, it just shows how high of a level his jiu-jitsu's on. And, he's only 27 years old, too. He mentioned that in his post-fight press conference. He's a young stud, and, I would be nervous if I was anybody 1 through 10 in that middleweight division because I think he's 2 or 3. I think he's 2 fights removed away from a title shot because I don't see him fighting, too far. Well, he's not going to fight down. I don't see him fighting, too many fights in the top 10. If he, fights a guy like Vettori, which we'll talk about in a second, and he beats him, he'll be already top 5 right there. And Adesanya, as we mentioned in the previous podcast, he's lapped that middleweight division, 2 times already with, take away Dricus du Plessis. So I think Allen, he's in the works for a title shot next year.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, he's finished 4 out of his last 5 in that win streak. The only decision coming against his fight against Malkoun. But outside of that, all submission victories, and 2 of them in the first round, including that fight against Bruno Silva. And I was really impressed because I knew about Brandon Allen's submission game. I knew about his grappling. But the stand-up was impressive as well. And granted, Bruno Silva's stand-up isn't the best in the division that you're going to have to offer. But I think he deserves a big spot next. I think, and especially, it's something that I think a lot of fighters kind of underestimate, the power of the post-fight interview, and really what you can do and where you can situate yourself, in anywhere in terms of who you're fighting next and financially and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And Brandon Allen did a great job at cutting a really awesome promo after the fight. He was saying that he wants to he obviously calling for a title shot next. That's not going to happen.
No.
But after an unranked Bruno Silva, as impressive as it was, but that's the kind of call-outs that you need as somebody who's up and coming in a division that maybe a lot of the casual fans aren't aware of who Brandon Allen is. But that post-fight press conference right there, it definitely garnished some views. I know I watched it live, so I need to watch it again. But I know for sure that if I was a fan who didn't know who this guy was, and he just dominated like that and was calling out the champion, saying that the champion cleared the division, which he did, like we said, I would be impressed, and I would remember the name. So for Brandon Allen, I think he.
I like what you did there.
Fuck Bilal Muhammad. But for Brandon Allen, I think he was an impressive victory. And then for him, you just mentioned the name, and it's the guy that me and him both think Brandon Allen should fight next. In a guy, Marvin Vettori. I know we had Vettori fighting somebody else last week. I think it was the main event this week of Strickland Imavov. I think I had him fighting the winner of that for Marvin Vettori. But I like this matchup even better.
I think it makes the most sense, honestly.
I think it does, because
everybody's booked about Derek Brunson. I don't know. I don't know when he's fighting again. Roman Ruiz.
Is he fighting again?
I don't think he has a fight like that. Actually, you know what? Why do I feel like he does? 1 second, guys. Let's see.
Yeah, well, as he goes and looks up that. So Vettori right now the number 4 ranked after his loss to Cannonier last weekend. And now it's...
No, he doesn't.
For Vettori, he doesn't. I didn't even know if he... I thought he honestly retired after his last loss.
He's 40 years... He'll be...
Yeah, I know. Years old. But even if he does have a fight left, I wouldn't want to feed him Brandon Allen.
No.
Because that would be a tough fight for Brunson. But, for Vettori, I think he's a guy that naturally, and Ada would agree, is at this point has to fight lower in the rankings. Yeah, and this would be a 4 versus 11. I think it's a I don't love booking matchups that have that much of a ranking difference, but in this situation, this circumstance, Brandon Allen 5 straight, white hot right now in the division, and a young guy. I think you test him against a guy who's super tough in Marvin Vettori.
I can't disagree with that at all, Joe. With the amount of promise Allen has shown in his last 5 fights, it's almost like you want to feed him to these top guys to really put his potential to the test.
Yeah.
With Vettori, I don't know if he's lost 2 out of his last 5, but he's lost to Adesanya twice. He lost to Cannonier, and he just beat Dolize, like I mentioned before. And he beat Paulo Costa. But other than that, I don't know if we mentioned this last week, but Marvin Vettori, he has the heart of a lion, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think he's favorable in any skill set against Brandon Allen that, would show me any concern in a potential fight. Brandon Allen, his jiu-jitsu game's elite. He's pretty good on the feet. Vettori, he's not bad on the feet, right? But I think... honestly, if that fight happened, I wouldn't be surprised if Allen opened up as a favorite. And, with that fight, I know you mentioned Allen called out for a title shot, but I think as soon as he said that, he's like, or a potential title fight, eliminator, or something like that. Because he knows, like you said, that's unrealistic, calling for a title shot after fighting an unranked guy. So with Vettori losing to Cannonier, I don't think he's a couple fights removed from a title shot. And that's generous. I would probably say 3 fights, and he'd have to win all 3 of them. You know, Allen, if he beats Vettori, like I said, he can get a shot at Adesanya, or maybe I don't know, somebody else. But he also called out Khamzat. You know, I like that move because that's a big name, which would lead to a big money fight. But let's just be realistic, right? Khamzat Chimaev, he's not coming out to fight anybody that's not the champion or under a top 3 ranked guy. You know, as hot as Brandon Allen's looking, he's not going to take a fight with the guy who's ranked number 11. That's just not idealistic. So
nope.
Yeah, I really think Vettori is the only ideal matchup for Brandon Allen.
Absolutely. And for Bruno Silva, a guy who I like a lot, as someone who's unranked, he's always somebody that if I see him on the fight card, I know that's going to be a good fight because he's very talented. But I like him taking a step down in competition because of how dominant that loss was. I mean, he looked good. He looked decent on the stand-up, but, Brandon Allen got the better of him in both regards. Absolutely. And I thought that was clear. So I like him taking a big step down in competition, fighting a guy like Julian, the Cuban Missile Crisis, Marquez.
That's a nice name.
A guy that, I don't know if you remember a few years ago, called out Miley Cyrus because he fought on like a Valentine's Day card or something close to Valentine's Day.
No, I don't remember.
He asked on the post-fight press conference if Miley Cyrus would be his Valentine. So Julian Marquez, a guy who's coming off of 2 finished losses now. He lost to Gregory Rodriguez in round 1, and then lost to a guy that we just saw fought a few weeks ago in Marc-Andre Barriault by TKO as well on the prelims of the Jones versus Sirgan card. So he's a guy that hasn't fought in a little bit now, and I think Bruno Silva, it's a good matchup for him. I think both guys have decent stand-up, decent grappling. I think Silva will probably have the edge in the grappling department with Marquez having a slight edge in the striking. Mm-hmm. But it's a good matchup. I think it's a matchup for the fans, and I think that would make for a good fight and a fair fight for Silva to get back.
I like that.
The matchup that you got would be feeding Bruno Silva to the lions.
Okay. And I'm sure, for any of you guys who've been keeping up with Joe Pyfer, you would think this is a good matchup for him, right? Joe Pyfer, he won the... Did he win the contender? No, I'm sorry. I was thinking you can't win the contender series. We can get a contract. He had a knockout in the contender series, and he's had 2 knockouts in the UFC so far, both ending in the first round. I think, Bruno Silva fighting the top 15 guy, you would probably put him in that, maybe 16 to 20, 22 range. I think Joe Pyfer, just showing again how dominant he has been so far, give him Bruno Silva, right? I know you're feeding him to the lion at that point, but with Pyfer, if he could win this fight, he'll probably fight in the rankings the fight afterwards.
And I think he would win that fight.
Oh, I think he would probably finish that fight in the first or second round, in my opinion. Pyfer, he just beat, and I was mentioning this to Joe before we started, he just beat Gerald Meerschaert. He actually knocked him out in the first round. And for those of you who watched, Meerschaert submitted Bruno Silva back last summer when Vera fought Cruz for the on that card. So it's not a good matchup for Bruno Silva. But, if you want, I guess, if Joe Pyfer, is beginning to elevate his game in his career, I think that's a good fight for him. And I don't think it would end any other way than a first or second round finish.
Absolutely. And now moving on to the second fight of the main card. I mean, this was a card that it wasn't the most stacked name-wise, but it ended up delivering for sure.
It did.
And we got David Onama. I really hope that is David Onama versus Gabriel Santos. I definitely got that one right. And what can you say about David Onama coming into, again, another guy that I was unfamiliar with, but what a spectacular knockout, cashing as a plus 185 underdog. Finishing him with 4-13 in round number 2.
Beautiful uppercut.
And it was a fight I was incredibly impressed with. Had that nice uppercut, and then had the Izzy finish, which I know Aiden's not a fan of.
It was just stupid. Like,
I
he over-exaggerated a little bit. I don't know.
I mean,
it was
excited.
A nice gesture. I don't think Adesanya minded at all. But it's just not the same, bro. Adesanya got his belt back, and he's just beating some, I don't know. It's just not at the same caliber. But I'm not going to talk crap.
Course.
With the way he finished that fight, he could have celebrated it however he liked, because he absolutely put on a beautiful finish. So, all hats off to him.
Yeah,
I guess.
and he looked good, and I was very impressed with the way he fought. You mentioned the jiu-jitsu defense was there.
It was great.
In round one.
He was in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the big thing that I like to see out of these young guys. It's what can they do when the chips are down, when they get dazed, they get rocked, or they're in a bad position and they're almost locked in on a finish. And his ability to come back and be resilient and find that finish. I think it warranted a celebration. He was very excited. So I give Onama, usually, especially with Izzy, because I think Izzy's very corny. I like Izzy. I think
Izzy,
he's
man.
one of the best in the world, one of the best ever, but he's extremely corny. But
You don't
for Onama, I don't mind it.
Why, man?
What?
You got to appreciate Adesanya's corniness. Listen, when he's as good as he is, he can be as corny as he wants.
No, I agree. But he's still corny.
No, he is corny. But I gained a lot of respect for him, though, after he defeated Pereira, and he had that whole thing afterwards, like, chase your dreams, go after something. For a lot of people at home, I'm sure that resonated with them deeply. So, Adesanya, as corny as he can be at times, he has good messages to, tell the world, and he's nothing but positive. Not to sound corny, but he's nothing but positive. So
he's somebody who's like many fighters, didn't come from much. So for him to be where he is, but now he's inspiring the next generation. A guy like David Onama, taking the celebration just because of how much of a fan he was. Which he mentioned in the post-fight press conference, and I think looking towards the future, Aiden, I'll give you the spotlight because this was a matchup that I agreed with after you said it. So Onama versus Jourdain, why does it make sense?
Yeah, guys, I think that fight makes plenty of sense. Jourdain, he fought Kron Gracie a couple months ago.
Yeah.
As bad as Kron Gracie looked, he tried to overplay an outdated, not say outdated jiu-jitsu game, because that jiu-jitsu is never outdated, but the guy was, sitting on his butt trying to scoot into Jourdain while Jourdain was on the feet. Like, you're a fighter in the UFC, that's, nobody does that, right?
Yeah, unless you're rocked, that's not something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jourdain, he called out Edson Barboza not too long ago. I think Joe and I talked about this on the pod weeks ago. Jourdain's like 5-5 in the UFC. He's 5-5 in the UFC. With the win against Kron Gracie, that he shouldn't be fighting Edson Barboza, who's ranked 14 right now. I don't think that would go Jourdain's way. So Onama, he just lost to Nate Landwehr a while. I can't pinpoint the exact date. But then prior to that, he had 3 knockout finishes in the UFC. So right now he's sitting at, either 3-1 or 4-1 in the UFC. He's an exciting fighter with an 11-2 record. I think him and Jourdain would be a promising fight. Yeah. They're both very good on the feet. And the winner of that can fight a top 15 opponent. But I think both of them need to fight an unranked guy before they fight a ranked guy, especially Charles Jourdain.
Absolutely.
So, what are your thoughts, Joe?
And so 3-2 in the UFC is his official record.
3-2.
Yes, sir. And he did his last fight. He took a layoff, and I think it paid dividends. Last time he fought was August 13th when he lost to Nate Landwehr by majority decision. He lost in his debut to Mason Jones.
Oh, guys, forgive me. I'm sorry.
Somebody that I personally never even heard of him. But again, no big. That was his debut fight. So, there's a minor setback. But Onama, Jourdain, I think that fight makes sense. Like Aiden said, all those points are there. I think it's a good stylistic matchup too. Both guys that are going to keep the fight standing. And I think would make a good matchup for the fans. Give them a featured prelim or a main card spot on a fight night and later this year. And I would sign me up. But next in a fight that had such an unfortunate ending. We were looking forward to the big boys swinging in Lane and Tafa. But a no contest, a nasty eye poke. I don't think I've ever seen an eye poke worse, Aiden.
No, I didn't see the eye. I rewatched it. I don't know why. I didn't really pay attention to the eye poke when I should have. But the eye poke. Did you see how Tafa's eye looked at the end of it?
Yeah.
He could barely keep it open.
Yeah, I don't know.
Thank God he said there was no major damage done, but it was rough.
Yeah, I see. We talked about the fight. It was Chris Curtis's fight, right? That ended up not.
Oh, against Imavov, yeah.
Yeah, that ended up not getting a conclusion because of the eye poke. And that one was, I thought they didn't give him enough time. But in this instance, I feel like they gave too much time. Like I mean, when you look at it, it was Tafa's eye it was all jammed up. Like it was like you saw it immediately. It was bruising already, and it was not even like a minute or two after the eye poke. There was no way he was gonna be able to continue. It was all swollen up, and I don't know why it took so long. I was watching the fight, coincidentally at work. Seems to be a common theme in my life. Just watching fights on the go. I always got to be somewhere. I can never just be home laying on my couch, unfortunately. Enjoying a fight night, especially because this one was early, which, is a little bit annoying, having it in the middle of a Saturday afternoon. Like, what are we doing, UFC? But, the Jacksonville crowd was rocking. So I guess I can't give it too much hate there. But, I don't know what took them so long. I mean, if I was a doctor, I would have came in there and be like, yeah, he can't see out of that eye. He's done, and then, move on. But they gave Tafa, I guess, a time, which I guess is
they didn't stop it till 4
nice.
minutes.
Yeah, it's nice, but I didn't think they needed 4 minutes for that personally. It was nasty. And then looking to the future, we didn't even start the fight really. It was like, not less than a minute in.
Yeah,
so
you should definitely run it back.
Just when Tafa's healthy, run it back.
I said, that or maybe Tafa versus Usman. The only reason I'm going to take that back for now because Muhammad Usman, for those of you who don't know, is Kamaru Usman's older brother.
Yep.
He just fought Tafa's younger brother, Junior Tafa, back in April, and he won that via unanimous decision. So, you could have a big build up to that fight. Maybe in a couple fights from now, if we see both of those guys, winning a couple of fights, I think that would, build up to a bigger fight.
I like that for the
future.
I like that for the future. Hopefully Tafa can get a victory. Usman gets a victory in his next win and in his next fight.
Yeah.
And then put those two together. That makes for a great story. I didn't even know Tafa had a brother in the UFC.
Yeah, he was undefeated actually.
Really?
Yeah, well he was 4-0, now he's 4-1. But yeah.
Well, the more you know. But next got to go to a fight that broke my heart a little bit, but it's okay. Amanda Ribas versus Macy Barber. Barber finding the TKO in round 2, cashing as a plus 160 underdog. Another dog that came up clutch for any bettors out there. But what a fight all around. Was so entertaining from start to finish.
Any sexist remarks I've made about female fights, guys, I'm going to take all of that back right now because this fight delivered. Usually, that's not the case. But this was a great fight, guys. So, I'm happy I watched. And the reason, in case if you guys don't know, that Macy Barber dominated the way she did. Fortunately, I don't want to tell you guys, her and I, we just broke up a couple weeks ago. So, she had...
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
No. And then the same thing happened with Miranda Ribas. That's why she didn't fight that well because, she was still... she was more the upset type.
She was coping.
And Macy Ball was more the angry type.
Yeah, I tried to control her.
No, we were in our dreams, and then we wake up and realize we are in Aiden's basement. Still in New York, not anywhere close to where they are, unfortunately. But man, you want to fly me out to Brazil? I'm there. But I mean, to talk about the actual fight now, and not our dreams. I mean, Macy Barber, I was so impressed with her just from every aspect of her game, the ability, because in that first round, I think Barber did win the round, but it was really a close round, and I think Amanda looked good on the feet. I thought she was mixing up her strikes really well, but Macy Barber was just able to keep her composure, and she's someone that came in into the UFC in 2018 and was somebody who was very highly touted. She was somebody who was kind of pushed a little bit by the organization. I mean, you gotta think her second loss in the UFC was to a champion and Alexa Grasso.
No shit.
Yeah. So and that was the last time she lost back in 2021. So she's somebody that the company has really pushed early in her career. After she came to UFC, won 3 straight, and then she dropped 2 before now going on a 5-fight win streak. So she's somebody that
she's had 5 fights in 2021.
5 fights since 2021.
Wow.
Yeah, she got Miranda Maverick 2021, then 2 fights in 2022, and Montana De La Rosa, Jessica I, Andrea Lee, and now Amanda Ribas.
Good for her.
So and she and like you mentioned, I think Ribas' stand up looked good, but Macy Barber's looked better. I thought Ribas looked good when they were on the ground grappling, but Barber looked better. So it was really Barber kind of outclassing somebody who was ahead of her in the rankings and who was supposed to beat her by all counts of the measure. So I think it's really impressive. I think Macy Barber has been able to really elevate her game to a new level, and I think that for her next, it makes sense. Me and Aiden. Ugh. I don't know why. I'm slacking right now. I feel personally, but it's all right.
In case you guys don't know,
we're picking it up.
It's all good. My name is spelled very weird for those. It's Irish, so it's spelled Aodhan instead of the traditional Aidan. So I've been called Aod my whole life. It's no big deal.
Yeah, no, but that's the main man, Aiden, right there. And if he has if you call him anything else, give him a few weeks and he'll mess you up. But right now he's on the IR, injured reserve.
Yeah.
For reasons we will not mention on the podcast. We don't need to discuss why.
No, we can keep that to ourselves.
you folks, you don't want to know the pain that
Use your imagination.
The pain that I felt hearing about what this man is going through right now is hurt me enough for the audience at home as well. You don't need to subject yourselves to that. Just a thought. But my man ain't toughing it out right now. Gotta give you credit.
Struggling.
Nah. You are struggling, boss man. But you're surviving. Honestly, you're
surviving. Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
You're surviving. But back to fighting. A great matchup for Macy Barber next, and someone who doesn't have a fight is Caitlin, and she changed her last name. Good for her, got married, but I don't know how to say his last name. I think it's
Sermonera.
Sermonera. Yeah, Sermonera. I think that sounds about right. But Caitlin Sermonera, I forget what it was first. It was something with an S, right? Her
last name?
Yeah.
It's Caitlin Chokogian.
I'm
yes. Saying
that wrong.
Chokogian.
Yes. Yeah, but now Sermonera, and last time she fought felt like a little bit ago, and it was October of last year, the 22nd. So a long time ago, and then before that she won a split decision against Amanda Ribas back in May of that year. So it's been a while since we've seen her. Obviously, maybe some things going on in her life, which has led her not to fighting recently. I don't know. I don't follow that much of Sermonera's life, but either way, I think she makes for a good match with Macy Barber, somebody who can test her in both the stand-up and the ground game. And I think that's the next step for her. I think if anyone deserves to fight above the rankings, it'd be Macy Barber at this point, and Sermonera sits at 6 right now.
8 through 6, that's a perfect matchup.
Yep.
We both thought about Jessica Andrade, but unfortunately for Miss Andrade, she's fighting Tatiana Suarez, who's looked like a killer recently, sitting at number 10 in the straw weight rankings. So with Andrade losing that fight. Well, actually, I don't think that's in strawweight, so she probably wouldn't drop in flyweight.
No.
But Andrade has been super active. I think this would be her. Shit, man, this is her third fight in 2023 already. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think she fought Lauren Murphy. Oh no, I'm sorry, it was Erin Blanchfield, then Yanzo Nian, and then now it's gonna be Tatiana Suarez. But yeah, Caitlin Sermonera, 8 through 6. Macy Barber. I think a good fight in a few years from now, maybe, which would be a great build-up, is Erin Blanchfield and Macy Barber. They're both very young prospects. I think Blanchfield's 23 or 24. No, I think she's 23 now, and Barber's 25. One of them, I think Blanchfield, she has a fight lined up. Well, you said there's speculation on who is she fighting.
Blanchfield.
Something Santos. Forgot her first name.
Talia Santos?
Talia Santos. So Blanchfield wins that, after the Shevchenko Grasso 2. Blanchfield might fight the winner of that. And, Barber, let's say she beats Chokogian, or Sermonera, I'm calling her by her maiden name. She beats Sermonera, she might have another fight, and then she could fight for the title. So I know this is a lot of,
what ifs.
What ifs right now, but I'm just saying, maybe a year from
that's
now,
this game, honestly.
That is this game. You got to think of it like, down the road. Yeah. That would be a good fight between Blanchfield and Barber, maybe a year or two from now. But until then, I think Sermonera would be a good way for her to get to that point.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Andrade. Andrade, not 3, but 4 times. This will be her 4th fight in 2023 already.
So she fought Lauren Murphy, right, in the beginning. Yeah, I knew. I thought that was in December.
Yeah, no, it was January. It was January, and then she made less than a month to fight Blanchfield.
That's right. Oh, I remember that because that fight, that card was supposed to be originally Vera and Sandhagen in February, and that's at the Apex, and then it got moved to somewhere else. That makes sense. So that fight, okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So that, I mean,
4 fights already.
Give her props. I think after this fight, coming up against Tatiana Suarez, I think she does need to win because now she's 1 and 3 this year. 1 and 2 in the year. Don't want to get to 1 and 3. But she was riding a 3-fight win streak before that quick turnaround against Blanchfield. So I think Andrade, I think she could very well win the fight. It's gonna be tough against the undefeated Suarez, but it's
were the odds out for that one or no?
The odds. Let's see. Do we have odds here? I'm not sure.
No, okay,
it's not on ESPN. Surprisingly, not promoting betting on at least for this fight. Although if I keep looking, maybe no odds. But obviously the odds are out there. I think it's probably Suarez a slight favorite.
No, she'll be. I guarantee. And I was right when I called out the Cejudo one.
No,
this
you
was
were
between
right.
him and I. She'll definitely be at least a -200 favorite. I'm calling her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially like you said with Andrade's recent losses. And it's not like she just lost. She got submitted by Lauren Murphy in the second. I'm sorry. She got submitted by Erin Blanchfield back in February, and then she got brutally knocked out against Yan Zhongyang. I'm sorry, guys. My Chinese isn't that fluent. You're gonna have to bear with me.
Nah, fair enough.
But she's suffered pretty drastic losses recently. Or sorry, she's been finished pretty badly. So, I don't see that being even odds or close to even odds by any means.
Right. Well, it seems like the odds have yet to been released, and I didn't even realize this. For this fight, Andrade is actually stepping in. Suarez was supposed to fight Verena Jadaroba. Hope I said that right. Verena Jadaroba. I don't think she is ranked. So now Andrade stepping in and putting her ranking on the line as well.
Was she ranked at strawweight?
At strawweight, she's 5.
5. Okay.
So oh no, Verena is 6. Sorry, I'm a casual women's MMA fan. You can call me a casual all day.
Oh yeah,
but she's ranked 6. So yeah. Oh,
that's
this
the one, the
chick.
Brazilian one. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
She just beat Marina Rodriguez, I believe.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, she's pretty good. And she got a pretty dope personality too.
She's pretty hot too.
Listen, we've talked enough about these women. Let's talk about them as fighters.
Guys, I'm sorry. It's been a rough couple of days.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, fair enough. And now for Amanda, I think she would be well off fighting a little bit lower in the rankings. I think I was originally looking at her versus Andrea Lee. I found that Lee is matched up against Natalia Silva later this summer on August 19th, and I think that she should fight the winner of that. Andrea Lee rather is currently ranked 13th. Ribas moved down 2 spots to 11th now, so I think that the winner of that fight will probably stay within that 13 to 12 range if you're Lee or Silva, and I think that would be it makes sense for Amanda next. I think Amanda should take a little bit of time off, and get right and fight the winner a little bit lower in the rankings, and I think she would have success because she's very talented. Outside of her being a very attractive woman.
You told me to stop. Look at it. It's all good.
Very very talented fighter. I think she has a great jiu-jitsu and a stand-up game that I think is a little underrated. I think it could still be improved, but I think it's underrated nonetheless. I think she mixes things up well. And I think that she'll find success in her next fight, and I think that would be a good get-back fight.
I like that. Ribas. I like that matchup. I'm gonna talk about this for 30 seconds, guys, because we got to move on to this. I was gonna say stellar main event, but it was a beatdown. But we'll talk about that in a second. Briefly, I want to say I think Ribas would match up well against Tracy Cortez. They're both stellar jiu-jitsu athletes. I don't really have a lot of statistics to back that up based off like how many submission wins they both have or whatever. But Cortez, she's had some time off. She had a fight booked. I don't know against who, and I believe she backed out of that. Obviously for those of her ex-boyfriend Brian Ortega, the guy's one of the best jiu-jitsu artists in the game at 145. So, I don't know how much jiu-jitsu they're practicing. But I know that Tracy Cortez she has a lot of, her jiu-jitsu's good, guys. We'll just leave it at that.
The podcast is going. We started talking about that fight, and the podcast has since went off the rails, and I am here for it.
It's a good time to move on to the main
event. It's a good time to move on to the main event. Josh Emmett versus Ilia Topuria. Honestly, something that I probably could have saw coming. And one thing I couldn't see coming, I could have told you it was probably going to be dominant. I had a gut feeling. A gut feeling was telling me that this fight was going to be one-sided. But
50-42 though.
But 50-42 I don't think I could have foresaw. And a decision and Josh Emmett staying in the fight was something I could not see. And you got to mention the one of the biggest headlines coming out of that fight, as Aiden just said, 50-42 was one of only 4 fights ever in UFC history to get to that 50-42 ranking. And the last time we saw it was against Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar to kick off the 2021 UFC slate, if you will. I think that fight was early in the year.
It was.
And he just completely dominated. And it was.
But he also set a significant strike record. He had like 400 significant strikes, so that makes sense. And listen, there was no point in this fight where Ilia Topuria was in trouble at all. Emmett had some good strikes, but I will say, especially in that first round, which was probably the closest round. I don't know which judge gave it to Emmett, but I know one judge said that Emmett won that round 10-9. I think the closest scorecard was 49-45 by that judge. Again, I just can't think of his name. I know Christopher Lee was the one who scored at 50-42, but. The thing that surprised me more was a 10-7 scorecard. 10-7 scorecard. I don't know.
For a round.
For a round, exactly.
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of fights, especially the last year and a half, and I don't think I've seen a round that was ever 10-7. You usually think 10-8's lopsided, but if 10-8's lopsided, then what the hell is 10-7? That's like you have no fight in it. You're just taking straight damage, which maybe he was, but
I mean, he was in that 4th round, but I don't know if the 10-7 is really, at least in my scorecard. If we're talking 10-8, I mean for sure, 100%. I think that round, but 10-7 is like this dude is on his last legs. And granted, Josh Emmett kind of was in that last round, but it wasn't like there was in that round, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think there was multiple knockdowns. Yeah, there's only one knockdown in the whole fight, which did occur, I think, in that 4th round.
No, it was in the second.
Oh, it was in the second, actually? Oh, so in the 4th round, there wasn't even that knockdown. So, when you're looking at a 10-7 round and there's not a knockdown, I mean, granted, he was the one that was, dominating the fight, but I don't know if... I feel like a 10-7 should be an absolute masterclass, and I think Topuria did put on a masterclass. But not in that 4th round. I don't think that 4th round was that lopsided to justify the 7. 8, I'm fine with.
Yeah, I think 50-43, 50-44 would have been a good.
Yeah, So which is why he did make history, but I don't think the 42 was I guess deserving. Although he did dominate the fight, but I don't think he dominated to the scorecard in which you said it was Chris Lee again, the 50-42. Yeah.
Him and Sal D'Amato.
Yeah, those
not
two.
Good referees, not good
They're
judges.
a dynamic duo of messing stuff up, but thankfully there was no way you could mess this up. And Topuria came out. He was another guy that really boosted his stock. Somebody that I think at least if you were aware of and not a casual, I feel you knew who Ilia Topuria was. But Topuria, who was another guy who's with that impressive showing, for the less dedicated fan, could have absolutely, put himself on the map.
There's no way this guy isn't going to be a champion, Joe.
Yeah.
And I don't know if by the end of this year. I don't know if it would be by the end of this year. Definitely not. But next year, maybe. I think he'll... Dude, just the way... Watching him fight, how poised he is in the pocket. And I forgot... I think it was John Anik who mentioned this. He has a very, traditional boxing stance, but he's not, overzealous. He's not... Like Josh Emmett was. Josh Emmett was putting... And I think this is why he probably gassed out a little early, and the later rounds were pretty bad for him, especially that 4th round. But Josh Emmett, he was putting everything in those punches.
He always does that, though. Josh Emmett throws every single strike he throws is with the intent of murder.
Which is,
that's why
that's
I like
great.
Josh Emmett, honestly.
That's kind of like Michael Chandler in a way. That's great.
Yeah.
But, when you're fighting a guy like Ilia Topuria, who's just so smart, so strategic.
And technical.
And who's technical. and he's being known. There's talks about him being one of the best boxers in the game right now, and I can't say I disagree with that too much. So a guy like Taporia though, he was just so calm, collected,
Yeah, and he's
and
also
he
somebody
put on a clinic.
he doesn't even kick. I don't know.
He wasn't.
Rarely
Emmett
kicks.
damaged his leg more than he damaged.
And Taporia even coming in the fight, he didn't kick much. Coming into the fight, when I was going through, doing my thing, going through the fight, seeing getting some analysis of it. What a lot of people were saying was Taporia doesn't even kick, and he doesn't even need to because of how good and fluid his boxing is. And how good his grappling is when he can get into the game, because he does have multiple submission wins in the UFC. So he's a guy that's super well rounded. Put on a clinic against Josh Emmett, and you got to give Josh Emmett his praise because of just staying in that fight and being able to survive. His face was a mess after, and but he's somebody that you really can't question at the heart of Josh Emmett. Although Taporia did show that he was levels above him that night, and for Taporia, I think it's a great fight, and a fight that I feel it's like two of the top prospects make this a co-main event of a pay-per-view
or a fight night.
Or a headline of a fight night, ideally a headline of a fight night, against Arnold Allen. What a fight that would be. Arnold Allen lost earlier this year to Max Holloway via decision, and Holloway again just looked like his same old self, and it's everyone was excited to see Arnold Allen in that step up in competition, but Max Holloway, every single time you throw an elite prospect at him, he just proves
that's why
that he
it's
is
too
just
early to have
levels
fight
above.
Holloway. I mean, for Taporia and Holloway to fight, because as close as the odds for that fight would probably be, it would probably be plus 150 minus 1. I don't know. It would be close, the odds.
It would be close.
But if let's just say hypothetically Taporia was to fight Holloway and Taporia lost, that's just not good. For Volkanovski's case, because people are already talking about Volkanovski being the best featherweight of all time, and we've seen him beat Holloway 3 times. But besides the Korean Zombie, every defense Volkanovski has had, Holloway would have beaten that contender first, and that kind of like tarnishes your reign a little bit, right? It's almost like you're giving him the sloppy seconds, I guess, in a bad way to say it, but.
No.
Taporia.
You're not wrong.
I can't stop thinking about a Taporia and Volkanovski title fight, but he has to get through Yair Rodriguez first, which I don't know. I think we might see a new champ this July, guys. But,
yeah, and we'll talk about that in next week's episode.
Yes.
But but the fight back to the fight with Arnold Allen is a fight that I really like. I think both guys. Incredible stand-up. I think that this fight, it could stay standing. It could even go. I think the grappling exchanges would be great as well between those two guys. Those two guys both underrated in that department. So I really like that fight. I think that fight puts, depending on the way, whoever wins that fight, whether it would be a decision or a finish. I think if one of them gets a finish, I think that could even elevate them. Depending on, I guess it's very much circumstantial, but depending on the state of the division with Holloway and this Volk Rodriguez fight in just 2 weeks' time, obviously there's a lot that could go there, but that could potentially be a title eliminator, honestly.
100%.
Depending on then there's a lot of factors, but I think it would be a great fight against two of the younger elite prospects, and you don't really get this very much. I feel in the UFC. I feel like it's always you get an elite prospect versus a veteran who's either in their prime or or waning down. But either way, it's very rare you get two guys who are very much elite in their division, very much young guys in the division, and both although Allen's coming off a loss, he was riding a big win streak before that loss, so he's still very much high, very much in the division. Because he lost to the second best guy in the division, you can't really take off too much of his stock for that.
Not at all.
The fact he just didn't get finished, but if you survive a 5-round fight with Max Holloway, you get, I'll give you credit. And you're just staying in it, and even I don't know if did he win a round in that fight? I think he did.
He actually I think it was pretty. Two guys had it 49-46, and one ref had it 48-47.
Yes, yeah.
So
I knew it was Holloway was the clear winner, but I knew Allen banked around there too, for sure 1 round, and so if Allen proved he's capable of winning, a round against a former champion, even two on one judge scorecard, and Topuria proved that he was able to. He just fought a guy who fought for the interim title, and he dominated him. I mean, I guess Rodriguez did finish him, but
He did.
Did dominate him from start to finish in similar fashion. It's it's a perfect matchup, I think.
I would agree.
And then for Josh Emmett, I like Josh Emmett a lot, so it really upsets. It was upsetting to see that loss, at least for me personally. I think Emmett's a guy. He has a lot of heart. I don't think I just think, and I don't even know if it's just the fact that he's just a smaller guy in the division and just in general. But I feel like his striking there's not much nuance to it. It's very much just looping, throwing everything he has. And granted, he's one of the strongest guys pound for pound, I think, in the sport.
But muscle doesn't always win fights, though.
Yeah, but that does not win fights, absolutely. So I think for him now, he's getting up there.
38 years old.
Yeah, 38 years old, folks. I think he's unfortunately probably gonna have a major step down in competition, and the guy that me and Hayden both have, him fighting next in our hypothetical matchmaking here would be pretty devastating, and that is the number 10th ranked featherweight, Movsar Evov, and he is he's only ever gone to decision in the UFC, so I think that this fight with Emmett could potentially prove to be not too much of a risk for Emmett, but I think it would be a risk for him, not for his him getting hurt or getting finished, but more for his ranking, because Evov has showed that he knows how to win fights. I think he's undefeated. I think
17-0.
Yeah, he's undefeated as a pro, and he's undefeated in the UFC. I was just trying to get how many fights it is. I think it's 7. That would make 7. He fought Ige in June of last year to a decision. Just beat Lopez a few months back via decision as well. But he's proved that he knows how to win fights, and for Josh Emmett, it would be a risk considering his ranking that he's at 6. But it's probably the best matchup he's gonna get. If he wants to stay relevant in the division and maybe make one last run at it, it would start by knocking off an undefeated fighter.
No, you're 100% right. Emmett, like I just mentioned, there was a big discrepancy in age between him and Topuria at 12 years. Topuria's 26, Emmett's 38. For those of you who follow up on Josh Emmett's weight cut, I've watched a couple videos on it. The guy, he fought the UFC originally at 155. I think he lost his second fight, and then that's when he decided to make that cut to 45. But this guy is cutting from, you typically 190, 185 to 145. That's a big weight cut, and at that age, it only gets harder. So if he wants to make a run for one more last, run at the title, I think, he needs to fight somewhat soon. I know that he just took a beatdown. Maybe, the fall, winter, to finish the year off.
Mm-hmm.
But like Joe just mentioned, he needs to fight somewhat down in competition. And you're looking at the rest of the rankings, right? The Korean Zombies fighting Holloway, Giga Chizadke, he's number 9. I don't know who he's fighting. He's been inactive for a while, but there's no. Yeah. I don't know if he would necessarily fight up because he just lost to Calvin Kattar over a year ago. And just how good Evlov has looked. Granted, when he beat Diego Lopez, that was his debut in the UFC. Shout out to Diego Lopez for taking that fight, and being one of the best fights of the night in that card. But I think Evlov deserves to fight up, man. I think Emmett, as unfortunate it would be, especially if he loses, Emmett's gonna need to really step it up and take a fight against a guy like that.
Yeah, and I think he will, because he's just such a tough dude, and he's somebody that's never afraid of the competition, and he proved it. On Saturday afternoon, I guess I'll say, by taking that fight with Topuria, because Topuria's a guy that nobody wanted to fight, and Emmett said, I want that quick turnaround. Fought earlier this year, lost in devastating fashion, but wanted to get right back into it, and he did. And although it didn't go his way, I think that Emmett ideally, hopefully he can get a fight soon. If he's able to heal, because he didn't mention retirement. He wants to keep fighting. Wants to give it one last run. I think Evlov would be a good start for that.
Yeah, unfortunately for Emmett, though, he was very inactive prior to this year. He only fought once from 2022. I'm sorry. He fought once a year from 2022 to 2020. Yeah, he only had one fight in the last 3 years. Sorry, one fight each year in the last 3 years prior to this year. So, when you're only fighting once a year for 3 years, I don't know. It's being that inactive and then finally coming back to a lot more activity is tough, So I think he needs to have another fight to finish the year off. This will probably be his first year having 3 fights in God knows how long, dude. I don't even know the last time he had 3 fights.
Yeah, and honestly, if he does take the rest of the year off, I would not blame him whatsoever. No. He's gotten beaten and bad in both fights that he's fought. So, if he doesn't come back, I mean, for his career trajectory and his age, he should come back quick. But for his health long term, probably should take some time off. So, hopefully, wishing Josh Emmett all the best. But, hopefully he takes a little bit of time. And if he's back for the winter and gets maybe an end of the year card, I'd be cool with that. If he waits, cool with that as well. But, not much more can be said about Ilia Topuria. And we'll mention him a little bit more later in the show. But for now, let's talk performance of the night. For my prelim performer, I got 2, and I'm just gonna put the whole fight of Trevor Peek versus Chipe Mariscal. They had fight fans excited, tweeting about it, and they were one of the first prelims, if I'm not mistaken. They were the third prelim of the night, so the third fight of the night, and Trevor Peek actually had his fight canceled versus Victor Martinez. He was supposed to fight. Chipe Mariscal comes in a short notice and wins that fight, and kind of brutal fashion. Goes to a decision, but he absolutely beat up Trevor Peek, and you got to give props to Trevor Peek for having a chin like that, because of he was able to take a beating. But those 2 are my prelim performers. And they just, they put on the show early in the card, and you gotta give credit to these prelim guys. They're coming in, and when you put on a banger like that, it's why people shout out Brawler Brother on Instagram, always telling people to watch the prelims, and I agree. When I do, and that was a great fight, for sure. And those are my prelim performers of the week. But let's go into the biggest stock riser, and me and Aiden agree. It's Miss Barber.
Miss Barber. And I'm not just saying that based on how I personally feel about it. I'm saying that based off how she fought. Especially, we talked about how good she looked on the feet, but the beginning of the end of that fight for Ribas was the head kick she was landing too. I think she had a head kick and then finished it off with a cross, or I don't remember exactly the punch she threw.
No, the kick was nasty.
The kicks were nasty, very nasty. So, Barber fighting Ribas, who was ranked 2 spots above her. Now that I think about it, we probably should have put Topuria.
Biggest stock ride? Nah.
Well, you know what? Because people already knew how good he was. So, scratch that. I think I like Barber. Because, especially being the underdog, Topuria was like a minus 300 favorite. So,
absolutely.
Vegas didn't think she would win, and she dominated.
Exactly.
So I would Macy Barber.
Absolutely. And for the stock fault, I think Josh Emmett. I think Emmett, he was a big underdog. All things considered for a main event. Usually main events are a little bit closer in terms of odds, but nonetheless, I thought Emmett. It's tough. I think that he kind of proved that he's a one-trick pony. If he can't get the finish through landing one of his looping strikes, it's tough for him to win fights. And I think that was just it just further proof that he's kind of at his age. I can't really see him evolving much more as a fighter. So for me, it's big stock drop. If you get 50-42, I'm sorry. You're gonna get on.
You have to.
You're gonna be the one person out of all these awards that I'm gonna have to give the negative to. So I'm sorry, Josh Emmett. I'm a fan, but not a fan of your performance. Not impressed with your performance. Shout out GSP the GOAT. But for finish of the night now, we had a little bit different here. I went with Brandon Allen. I thought that I was super impressed. I guess maybe not the nature of the knockout for me in terms of the finish of the night, but more just the dominant fashion. Yes. The dominant fashion, which is why he was my finish of the night. But for you,
you know what?
I like yours as well, though.
Yeah, I picked David Onama based on the flashiness of his finish. But he wasn't dominating that fight by any means. All three judges gave the fight to
the first round.
Santos.
Santos, yeah.
They gave it to Santos in the first round. And then, even in the second round, he was in a little bit of trouble. He picked it up with the kickboxing, and then, he obviously delivered with that beautiful uppercut leading to cross to knock him out. But yeah, I could see why Joe put Allen just based on how way he dominated that fight. But on flashiness alone, you have to give it to Onama.
Absolutely, and I think the UFC did give it to Onama, so I think that was the consensus. But for fight of the night, I think Barbaribas delivered. I think fight of the night ended up going to Emmett Topuria. I don't know how that was the fight of the night. I mean, it was 5 rounds.
That's probably why.
It was a 5-round beating, pretty
That's
much, essentially. So, I mean, it was a dominant performance. Definitely the performance of the night, if you want to talk about that. But in terms of the fight of the night, I think Barbaribas gave us the most action. I think Amanda looked good early on. I think Macy Barr took over as the fight progressed and found the finish in round 2. And that was the fight of the night for me. But if you want to go to the prelims and talk about that fight with Peak, I would give it to that too. But Barbaribas, I think, undeniably 8 degrees fight of the night. So that concludes as for the UFC ABC Topuria Emmett talk. I think that was a great fight card. There's a lot. The future looks bright for a lot of divisions, especially women's flyweight and men's featherweight, as a result of the results that we saw on Saturday night. And Jacksonville, shout out Jacksonville, had a pretty decent crowd there.
Shout out Jacksonville.
I don't think it was anywhere close to the UFC Charlotte vibe that we had I think that was our first episode.
First or second, yeah.
It was one of our first episodes, but that crowd was electric for a fight night. This crowd, not as great, but shout out Jacksonville. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was mentioned that I think they go back to Jacksonville every year because Jacksonville was one of the first places where the UFC was able to fight post-COVID, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, shit.
A little fun fact there. So I think the UFC always returns there just on the principle alone, and I think that's a fantastic reason to do so.
Absolutely.
I know, me personally, I think that was really when my complete, because I've always loved watching fighting. I've always loved the UFC, but COVID and the UFC being the only sport to return during COVID, I think really blossomed my love for the sport. I don't know if you could say the same for yourself.
No, I would
Aiden,
agree.
But it was the only sport on, and I already loved it. So now I could really geek out about it, and that was the only thing to really look forward to. So I was wanted to know everything about everybody. So I think so to give props to Jacksonville for being one of the first actual cities in the U.S. to allow the sport to come back amidst COVID. I think it's a great thing that the UFC does, and another great card in Jacksonville, and I look forward to them returning next year. But with that, let's go into some of the major headlines, and none bigger in the MMA world, unfortunately,
right.
because it's as much as Dana doesn't want to say it's a gimmick fight, it's what else would it be considered? And I'm sure you guys all know what we're hinting at. But Elon Musk versus Mark Zuckerberg, apparently in the works. Obviously, we know about Zuckerberg's jiu-jitsu. He won a jiu-jitsu tournament. I know, and he's whoop-de-doo.
Impressive.
I wonder who his competition was.
Yeah, right.
Love to see it, but obviously, so Zuckerberg's gotten some notoriety in the MMA world because of the fact that he's competing in jiu-jitsu, and obviously there's a little bit of beef there. Dana mentioned it, has mentioned it multiple times. He said that he's spoken to both guys, and both guys actually want to make this happen. Dana obviously wants to make it happen for monetary purposes, and it's so funny because in the post-fight press conference, and I kind of honestly I feel like we should let's do it. Roll the clip of Dana White at the press conference. Let's hear what Dana's wow, I can't speak just because of how stupid this is. The Dana's stupid is rubbing off on me. On how Dana justifies the fact that Musk versus Zuckerberg, how that would happen in the UFC, and why it's not a gimmick fight.
I was talking to both Elon and Mark last night. Both guys are absolutely dead serious about this.
Now, wait. Tell us why you say that.
Because they both said, yeah, we'll do it. They both want to do it. Mark Zuckerberg hit me up first and said, is he serious? And I said, I don't know. Let me ask him. I asked him, and he said, yeah, I'm dead serious. Obviously and I agree with you, Harvey, this would be the biggest fight ever in the history of the world. Bigger than anything that's ever been done. It would break all pay-per-view records. These guys would raise, hundreds of millions of dollars for charity. And, you don't have to be a fight fan to be interested in this fight. Everybody would want to see it.
So I'm picturing Jeff Bezos sitting right next to the octagon going, maybe I could take him on.
Bezos could ref it.
So here's the question. Look, we've seen Zuckerberg doing, he can fight. I mean, by the accounts of people he's been training with.
Well, we've seen it.
He's
been in contests.
He can fight. But does Elon have any combat sports background, or is he just going in winging it?
Mark takes the sport very seriously. He trains very hard. He actually is good at jiu-jitsu. He's good at stand-up. And Elon tells me that he's done martial arts. He's done jiu-jitsu. And he says, people might not think this of me, but I've been plenty of fights growing up in South Africa.
So, and by the way, I've read a lot on Elon, and that's absolutely true. Dana, let's get down to business, because that's my area. I want to know what you're planning, because this would be, you would be at the helm here. So is this something you're taking seriously? Is it something you're already trying to organize? Give us a lowdown.
So, yeah, I'm taking Lorenzo Fertitta called me this morning. Station Casinos in Las Vegas is putting a lineup on this today.
Wow.
And yeah, I'm taking it. Listen, if these guys are serious, I make fights that people want to see. That's what I do for a living. So if they really want to do it and they're serious and we can figure it out and figure out a way to pull this off, I would absolutely positively do this.
Yeah, so as you heard, not a gimmick fight at all, just because they're the two most, wealthy and influential people on the planet. That's the reason why it's not a gimmick fight.
Dude, Elon Musk is like 51 years old. This fight wouldn't be exciting by any means. Elon Musk has never been known for being an athlete.
No.
And I think, like you said, with Zuckerberg's recent, jiu-jitsu training and MMA training, I guess you would give him the edge. But, besides that, dude, this fight, the only reason people would want to watch this is not because of the skill these guys, I was about to say athletes, they're not athletes. The skill these guys possess. No. It's just like the influence they have.
It's who they are. Yeah, and granted, and it's funny. Granted, and I'm trying to think of something that's comparable. I mean, Dana did give CM Punk a shot in the UFC, and that didn't work out very well.
Yeah, 2 shots in the UFC.
Yeah, he fought twice, and both fights were hard to watch. Especially that Mickey Gall one. And Mickey Gall ended up not even being, he was a prospect, and that didn't end up being that good, but he looked like prime John Jones against CM Punk. And it's such a joke, because look, think about it like this. If any other sport organization that claimed to be the best in the world and have the best fighters in the world and be the best, would have like a fake, have something where two people who aren't elite athletes in the sport fought, competed against each other, it would be looked at as a total joke.
Yeah.
But just because of the fact that these two are the way it is, and the UFC is what it is, and fighting, I guess, is as much as we'll call it a sport, and it is a sport, MMA. Some people still just see it as two people fighting in a cage. So there is that aspect to it where it's and people get between the lines of entertainment and a sport. But it's still a sport, and the UFC claims to be the most elite organization, and I would agree in that fact that they do have the most elite fighters in the world, although there's amazing fighters in other organizations as well. How are you going to tell me now that you're going to put this fight on? It will be the headliner of a pay-per-view.
Do you think this fight's going to main event UFC 300 between... I wouldn't even watch it.
If he put that on,
I don't think Dana White's that
such
stupid.
a historic moment in 300, 3 century, the 3 century mark. Oh my gosh, just the thought of that is frustrating. But either way, it's such a stupid thing, and Dana knows, lying right straight through his teeth, that it is a gimmick fight. It's for the money, and I get the money talks, and I get that that these two want to do it, and you have the means to do it, so why not? But it really hurts the reputation of the UFC. And if they do something like this, and PFL is able to acquire Bellator, that could be that I could foresee, in the future. Maybe I'm gonna clip this, 20 years from now when things change and that merger ends up being the new face of MMA. Where these are kind of moments where it's like, one is trying to better themselves as an organization when you're looking at, on one end, and one is just trying to make the most money, and so it's, do I see the UFC being overtaken? No, but this Zuckerberg Musk nonsense, for us as actual fight fans it's a ridiculous thought.
It doesn't happen.
It's a ridiculous thought. I mean, honestly, I don't really care if it happens or doesn't happen. I think I'm kind of non-partial in the fact that if it does happen, I want to watch it. It's entertaining. Will I pay for it? Heck no. But would I watch it? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, knowing, like you said, UFC 300
Yeah.
having such a big number, it's going to be a good card from top to bottom. I think Jim Miller wants to fight in that card. This would be next year. Maybe McGregor might return. Who knows? So that fight is going to be good regardless. I mean, sorry, that card is going to be good. Take away this bum fight between Musk and Zuckerberg.
Nonsense.
So I would still buy the card based off the rest of the card.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm certainly not buying it.
I wouldn't
because
buy
these
just
douchebags
for
fight.
for sure. But I mean, I don't have much more to say on it. I
Yeah,
think
it's not much more
it's
you can
stupid.
say. Yeah.
It's stupid. I can't believe I gotta talk about this on an MMA podcast, but it's the MMA news, and I want to give you guys our thoughts on the news, and that's my thought. Stupid, stupid gimmick fight. And Dana, you're still on my shit list, pal. And next, a little less I guess notable amongst fans, unless you're very much following the news. Dricus du Plessis, he's set to fight Robert Whittaker later this year. Claims that when he and Izzy trained, I think it was 2017, if I'm not mistaken, but around there, 2017, 2018. The year doesn't really matter, but the time does. 5, 6, 7 years ago. Apparently he manhandled Izzy in training, and I know Izzy has responded with it was something along the line. I think Izzy's response was the fact that the grappling du Plessis did he said he did, he had me good on the grappling, but then in the striking he lit him up, which I believe.
Du Plessis said didn't even was like we didn't even.
Yeah, and du Plessis was like, oh no, we didn't strike, we just grappled and I dominated you. So I think it's more fuel to the fire of that potential matchup if he does end up beating Robert Whittaker. Can't see him beating Robert Whittaker, but if he does, by some way, stretch of the imagination, I don't know, Aiden. That's one fight I can't see du Plessis winning. Robert Whittaker is just too good.
I think it would have to be off of a crazy finish.
It would have to be a crazy finish, or just really, or du Plessis showing us a gas tank that I haven't seen so far.
Yeah, apparently he got his nostrils fixed or something, so now he can breathe better.
So maybe he could breathe better. So maybe he has maybe he gets more wind with that surgery, and maybe it's like a dominant wrestling performance. But if it's a stand-up fight, I can't see du Plessis out essentially kickboxing Robert Whittaker. I can't see it. I can't. But if this fight goes to the ground, if du Plessis has a gas tank that we've never seen before, maybe. But I can't see it happening. But it's more fuel to the fire, because that's kind of the matchup that I think the UFC is hoping that du Plessis does win, because right now Izzy doesn't have a clear opponent. And they would like to see him fight the winner of that fight, and I think they're hoping that's du Plessis, just because of all of the all of the baggage that comes with it, and the rivalry, and just the bad blood, because that's what sells pay-per-views.
Yes, it does.
So in that news, my reaction to it, whatever. But apparently du Plessis, it's he said, she said. We'll never know. If the footage comes out, we'll talk about it again. But if not, it's already left my mind. I don't really care about it. Rob, please beat du Plessis. I don't want to see Izzy absolutely destroy him. It would be Paulo Costa 2.0. I already see it.
Between du Plessis and Adesanya?
Yeah, 100%. I already see it from a mile away. Granted, they got two different styles. They're two different guys, but I think the dominance that Izzy would display would be very much the same. But now to talk about something that now excited to talk about some news that's actually exciting. The return of my favorite all-time women's fighter in the history of the UFC, at least for me personally. That she's my favorite, not the best of all time by any means, but my favorite. My girl Rose Namajunas is making her return at UFC Paris.
I'm yawning because I just can't wait to watch her have another boring fight.
No. That was a one-time thing. I honestly don't remember her justification for why that fight was so bad and why she was so lackluster.
Dude.
Against Carla Esparza the last time we saw her last year. But before that fight, Aiden. Let's
let me pull up her fights.
Before that fight, Rose Namajunas was not a boring fighter by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay, if she hadn't beat Weili Zhang or Zhang Weili, I don't even know.
Zhang Weili.
Zhang Weili. She knocked her out, and then she beat her by decision the second time, which some people thought Zhang Weili won. I'm one of those.
It was split. It was close.
It was split, right?
And I'm biased though, so I can't.
Exactly. And then she beat Jessica Andrade the second time. I actually think she knocked her out back. That was in 20. That was by decision in 2020.
Yeah, she had that. It was that really devastating. The like slammed it on her head. That was the Andrade loss in 2019 for the belt.
But dude, like take away that. I mean, granted, she's a 2-time champion. She beat her, and I think she also beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk, or I forgot. Yeah. So she is a 2-time champion in the strawweight division. But, she's fought once every year. She's worse than them. She fought twice in 2021. But despite 2021, she fought once in 22, once in 20, once in 19, once in 18, and then twice in 17. So 5 out of the last 6 years, she's fought once a year. And she's young, too. She's not old. She's like 30, 31. I don't know what she's doing. But, after that snooze fest of a fight against Carla Esparza, she's probably. I don't blame her for taking this much time off, but to come back, I don't understand this. I mean, she was trying to embark on a new journey, and I guess that journey being a move up to 125. I respect her for that. Maybe she can go for a title run at 25, but that's just speculation. She needs to beat Manon Fiorot, who is an absolute great fighter. She just beat Caitlin Sermonera back in UFC 280, like we had talked about before. So if she can get past Poirier, she'd be a top 3 ranked flyweight, and then maybe she'd get a title shot. So I could understand the game plan there, but if she loses to Fiorot, she probably won't fight again for another year and a half. So I have nothing else to say on that.
Honestly, and I'm hearing a little bit of Rose Namajunas slander, and I'm here to quiet that right now. It ends with me speaking again, because I love Thug Rose. I think she's had an incredible UFC career. She's somebody who fought for the title back in 2014. Only her 5th fight in the organization after starting off 3-1. Ended up losing to Esparza, who she ended up losing again to, coincidentally, in May of last year in what was one of the worst fights ever. But then she's in her career a lot of W's, and it starts with her big monumental moment was that KO in round 1 against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, who I was definitely butchered, but Joanna J, who was a dominant champion. I'm pretty sure she was on an incredible win streak, and Thug Rose was able to knock her out, and that was an incredible moment. She ended up defending that title, against Joanna in a 5-round decision, which is actually on the same card as Khabib versus Reginal Alaquinta.
Really?
Shout out Reginal for being one of the few fighters to go to a decision with Khabib, especially in 5 rounds for the title. Dude's the GOAT. Now he does real estate now.
He's from Long Island too, right?
Yeah, no, he's Long Island guy. That's why I said shout out my boy on Long Island.
Oh.
I don't know if he still trains, but obviously he's with all those guys at Law MMA.
Yeah.
With Aljo and such. But on that card, that's funny enough. Then she gets that brutal knockout that's pretty much slammed on her head by Jessica Andrade. But then she gets her win back against Andrade, won the next fight via decision, knocks out Weili in that incredible head kick, and then wins against Ali once again via split decision. So Thug Rose is still a very elite fighter. I don't care how bad that decision was with Esparza. She deserved to lose the title, I think. Even if I honestly thought she could have maybe even won that fight on the scorecards, but she didn't deserve to, honestly, because of that egregious performance.
Abysmal.
A champion should not look that bad in a title bout and look that hesitant in a title bout. She looked like she didn't want to be there, we saw that with Nunes too, and she was able to get her back, her look back against Juliana Pena, and I'm hoping that Thug Rose can do the same. And at 30, only 30 years old right now,
Yeah, so she's
sitting at 12-5, she's still very young, and I think she has a great fight against Manion Fiore coming up next. And I think for Thug Rose, I'm excited to see her return. I think she's gonna come out victorious, and I'm just excited. I'm excited for Thug Rose to come back. I think she's somebody who, granted she's not very active, but I don't think she has to be. I think she's somebody who's made enough of a name for herself that she doesn't have to fight that much every year. Doesn't have to fight 2-3 times, because if you don't need to as a fighter, you might as well, I guess, save your body, because fighting is strenuous, and
It is.
and a one fight could really change your outcome of just not even outlook of your career, but the outlook of your life. So for her, and for somebody who has that name notoriety, she doesn't have to fight as often as other people would, because she's still gonna always be in that title conversation, especially in women's MMA, which it's not a wrong thing to say that it's every division is more shallow than the men's than any men's division. It's just the truth.
It is.
So, for her being the name that she is, being as talented as she is, she's always going to be in the title conversation, and I think a win here would put her very much in line for the winner of Grasso versus Shevchenko 2. If Grasso does win. If Shevchenko does win, they probably want to do a trilogy. So I think that would
I don't think
probably
they do. I don't
then
know.
she would probably have to be on the sidelines, like Aiden said, for another year and a half, waiting for that title shot.
I don't know if they would do a trilogy, but they might, only because they were going to do a trilogy with Pena. And
Yeah, I think
but
if Shevchenko
25
wins, it
is more
probably
stacked
will.
than 35, bro. Like
Oh,
I said,
for sure.
Blanchfield. And
That's
now
probably
with Barber.
the best division in women's MMA for sure.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's only I'm
Yeah.
not gonna say unfortunately, but there's only 3. The featherweight's not even a thing.
No.
But yeah, out of the 3, I think flyweight's definitely the most stacked.
Absolutely, because again, we just talked about Macy Barber, Blanchfield's great, Santos is great. We got Fiore and Doug Rose coming to the division now. Add an extra 10 pounds. So and obviously Grasso's fantastic, and Shevchenko, a future Hall of Famer,
Absolutely.
and elite champion when she was champion before she was just recently dethroned. So I think that's probably the best division women's MMA, and Thug Rose just adding to that now. It's exciting for me, and I'm excited for the future of women's flyweight. I really am.
I am. I actually
really am.
I'm not saying that to be a dick. I'm actually
No,
looking forward to it.
Genuine excitement for your two hosts today in the women's flyweight division, and I can't remember the last time that I've been more excited to see how a weight class in women's MMA translates, because we've just had dominant champions. You think of Amanda Nunes, Shevchenko for that whole time. It was always just dominant champions, but flyweight feels wide open. I think Grasso is very good, but I could very well see Shevchenko getting the win. But I could also see Grasso defending her belt, and then she'd have to fight someone, the winner of Fiore versus Thug Rose. I don't know who wins that fight either. So it's
Yeah.
very much up in the air, and that's what makes it the best division in women's MMA as of right now. And I would say probably a pretty good division just in overall MMA. I think it's more. I would say honestly, comparing it to the men's divisions, I say in terms of like overall
I would say it's a more exciting division.
yeah, competitiveness and top to bottom, being stacked. I would say you could make an argument that it has more, it's more exciting fights top to bottom than again, in heavyweight, just because it's heavyweight, but in terms of actual skill and actual like close fights.
Bro, the most 4 recent title fights at 125 was between Figueiredo and Moreno. If you have those guys fight 4 times, that just shows like
Women's 125 is definitely more interesting than men's
It is.
125.
No, it is.
Although I'm very much looking forward to Moreno versus Pantoja
That's gonna be a good fight.
later this year.
I want Moreno to win that.
But me too. I love Brandon Moreno. He's a guy. He fights with so much heart, and he's so wholesome too. And you ever see him like he's just playing with Legos? Like he'd just be like I don't know if he has like a YouTube channel or whatever social media he does, or whether it might just be the the embedded, like the UFC embedded crew that, before fights just kind of, they follow you around a little bit and kind of do like little vlogs before the fights. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but
No.
they're on YouTube and they're pretty good. Actually, very interesting. Before the next fight card, definitely watch one. They're very good. It's literally just like it cuts to different fighters. And just like throughout their day, and it's just like start with like, let's say for the next card, they'll start with Volk, maybe Volk's training, and then it'll go to Rodriguez, maybe he's coming off the airport, or you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm sure you've seen it. Yeah, there's a bunch of clips from it, but it's like a vlog series. I think they do a great job, the UFC with that. I love it. I watch most of them when I can and when I remember to. Before fight cards, because it doesn't give you much insight into the fight, but it gives more insight into the fighter and humanize the fighter. And I think it's cool to see what the fighter has going on in their life besides when we see them in the octagon for 15 or 25 minutes. But with that, we're gonna go into our segment that still needs a name. And next week we'll mention it now. Now I feel we're kind of at a midway point-ish, although we're an hour 20 something in, so midway point. But we got nothing but time today, so we're gonna keep going for as much as we want. No time restriction today for us. But I know I said this week would be a big change week. Unfortunately, had some delays on some new set pieces, as well as new segments. So for those two things, I'll give you those two as the preview of what's to come. But next week we should have both ironed out, and we should be good to go on those changes. Hopefully, even the camera as well. That would be 3 changes that we would like to make for next week. Will it happen? We'll see. But for now, and then the fourth one we'll have a name for this segment, but it will remain the debate segment. And we'll start off with Ilia Toporia's masterclass. We talked about it. 50-42, one of 4 in UFC history. And it brought up the question once again, because Toporia's boxing was on full display. There was not a grappling at all in that main event, of who is the best boxer in the UFC, and that's our opening question for today's segment.
I still think you would probably, just because how long he's been in the game, I would still say Holloway, man. I feel like until those two fight, that would be obviously a good test to see who really is. But, Holloway's, man, he's been in the game for so long. The dude's been in the UFC since he was 20 years old, since 2013 or something like that, or 2012. So he's been in the game so long. He's only lost to the same couple of people. He lost to, like I said, Volk 3 times, McGregor once, Poirier twice, and somebody else. So he's only lost to 4 people in his entire mixed martial arts career. And just look at the records he's set, man. He was on a 12-fight winning streak before he faced Volkanovski the first time. He set the significant strike record against Calvin Kattar. And then, he was able to outbox Arnold Allen, who was this up-and-coming, and he still is an up-and-coming prospect, but he was able to, put a halt to that hype train for now. So, Topuria, on the other hand, as much as he dominated Emmett, he finished Bryce Mitchell. Even though he had a little bit of a setback in the beginning of that fight with Jai Herbert getting knocked down, he finished that fight. He knocked him out in a egregious fashion. It was bad, so I don't know, man. I still think it's Holloway just based off of longevity and accolades he set, but you can make an argument for Topuria just on how amazing he's looked so far.
Yeah. So. I think I agree with you. I think that it is Max Holloway, but I think 2 guys that I think you have to give a shout out to is somebody we're gonna see later this year, and I cannot wait to see him return. Dustin Poirier. I think Poirier is one of the best. I think he's top 3. And he could very well be in the conversation if Max Holloway didn't exist. Unfortunately, Max Holloway does exist, and he's fantastic, and he is, and it's the complete boxing. It's, the volume, the creativity, the shot placement. Granted, Holloway doesn't have the power that, someone like Poirier and a couple other guys that you want to talk about in this conversation might have. But it's just, his ability to just land strikes and also evade strikes. His defense is fantastic. I just always think about I think about that probably more than I should. That one from his fight with that 50-42 performance against Calvin Kattar, where he's looking and talking to the commentators as he's piecing them up and bobbing and weaving too.
That's insane.
It's insane. It's insane. And I think that was really the moment where he was like, yeah, I'm the best that there is when it comes to boxing.
You have to make an argument for him over Poirier because Holloway was a champion and Poirier's never been champion. Yeah. He was an interim champion, and he's fighting for the BMF belt, which, as in the words of our current champion at 155, is bum for belts. And it's not the bum for belts because him and Gaethje, they are arguably both, I don't know, I wouldn't say they're the second or third best lightweights in the world, but you could say they're top 5 lightweights.
For sure.
You know what? You could probably say. I don't know, man. Just based on how close that fight was between Volk and Islam, I think if Volk was fighting at 55, I think he'd be a top 5 lightweight.
Oh, for sure.
But
for sure.
Take that away, Poirier was never a champ, so it's hard for him to become the best boxer or to call him the best boxer in the UFC when he was ever champ.
Absolutely. And two more guys that I do want to shout out, and 2 guys that actually fought earlier this year. 2 guys that are also elite boxers that I feel deserve to be on this list. Rob Font and Adrian Yanez, 2 guys that I think Rob Font did end up finishing him in the first round when they fought in April. But both guys are incredible boxers. I think coming in, there was talks that Adrian Yanez might be, in that conversation. And obviously, Rob Font beating him on the feet proves that, Rob Font instead should be in that conversation. And I love Rob Font. I think that he's a guy that definitely should be in as well. I always think about his, I think of Rob Font and like his best performance. I think about the masterclass he put on back in May now, 2 years ago. Wow, that feels like yesterday. Against Cody Garbrandt in a fight night main event where he just outboxed him for 5 rounds, and it was really beautiful to watch. I again was not home, was not in any place where that's great for watching fights. I think I was outside somewhere, watching it on my phone, of course. But I just remember being in awe of the boxing skills, and after back-to-back losses in the main event spotlight. Rob Font got a step down in competition in Adrian Yanez and was able to finish him in round 1. So he's a guy that I think also one of the elite boxers in MMA. But although I think I thought the question is good for debate, but I think it's until Max Holloway takes a step down, and looks like he's not in his prime anymore. I can't go against him.
Well, Rob Font is fighting, as we mentioned last week, he's fighting another really spectacular boxer, and probably my favorite fighter at 135 in Song Yadong. I love Song Yadong, man.
When is that?
That
fight?
Is at your card you want to go to. UFC Boston.
No, it is not.
Yes, it is,
No,
Joe.
it is not. All right.
It's in August 19th.
We got it. Oh my gosh. Are you kidding?
I swear.
All right, well, I have to, this reaction for fans at home would make no sense, but, family's taking a trip for little brother's birthday. Long story short, to Boston. We were supposed to leave the day after. We're supposed to get there the day after. Start the trip the day after that UFC Boston 292. And me and my brother, big MMA fan, also trains with me. He's a very big fan of the sport as well. Shout out Lil Dill. Although he did, he's the reason why we don't have a new set piece, if you will. But nonetheless, a shout out to him. His birthday is in August 22nd, so we're going late August. Perfect timing to go see that fight card. And I was like, Mom, why don't you just get it for his birthday? And then we all go. And the fact that Rob Font for Song Yadong is on that card just lit a fire. Now I need to be there. I need to be at TD Garden. There's no way I'm not there because
Song's gonna finish him, but it's gonna be a good fight though.
Oh, you think so?
Look, I mean,
That's
again, I hate to bring in age,
That's
but
tough.
dude, Font just turned 36, and
yeah, but Font.
Song's 25.
But here's the thing with Rob Font. Rob Font's the one exception I feel to the age rule,
Especially
because
after
Rob Font
watching his
started
last fight.
fighting so late. He didn't start fighting until he was, I think, 30.
No.
Ever. I'm almost positive. I remember watching one of his first fights.
His first fight was in 2011. So he
Really?
was
2011?
He was 24 years old though when he had his first professional.
24 and his first professional fight, but I think he started around that same time as well. I think he started training 23. I'm almost positive.
Really?
He started training super late. I don't know why I thought it was so late, because his first fight in the UFC was in 2014.
Yeah.
So he's been, it's almost now a decade in the UFC. But nonetheless, I know he started training late. So I think he doesn't have, I guess, that wear and tear of somebody who's been training since they were little and has been trained their whole lives. And I think he looked great, obviously, in that win against Adrian Yanez. I think a lot of people had Yanez winning that fight. Coming in. So
Yeah, he was a big favorite.
Yeah.
Well, not a big, but he was a favorite.
he was definitely the favorite. So I like Rob Font. I like his chances in that fight, and God, I hope to see it live. And I would love to make some content for the podcast as well, if I was able to attend. But that's
It's
something.
because I think Song's a future champion of that
Yeah.
division. Prior
He
to
looks
his
like
fight
it. He
against
looks like
Ricky
it,
Simone,
for sure.
he was, he fought Corey Sandhagen, and unfortunately that fight ended in a doctor stoppage, excuse me, because of how badly his eye started to open up. But two of the judges had that two rounds to 2 going into the 5th, and this is against Corey Sandhagen, a guy who fought for the interim belt, and in my opinion is one of, and a lot of other people's opinions, is one of the best bantamweights on the world.
For sure.
And he put up an extremely close fight that unfortunately ended in the way it did. So this is a tough test for Rob Font, but as good of a boxer as he is, I wouldn't be surprised if he wins, but I don't think he will.
All
to
right.
keep it short.
Well, we will preview that when it comes time, and hopefully I'm
Hopefully you're
previewing
there,
it
man.
with the excitement of me being able to go. That is honestly the dream, and I think that I think there's a chance. I'm not sure yet, so I don't want to be like I'm gonna be there and get all excited. But I think there's a chance that I'm able to get there, and if I do, you guys will know about it. That is for sure. But next, another thing with Topuria, one of 4 fighters to, win a 50-42 decision. And, the question was, what was the most dominant decision in UFC history? And for me personally, I don't think this was it. I think I would have to go back. And again, I was 3 years old and 2 years away from being born. When you look at Rich Franklin's victory over David Lucea and Dave Menez's victory over Gil Castillo. So those 2 fights, I was just kicking it. So I did not see him, so I cannot put my input. But I think Holloway's win against Cater was more dominant. I think the striking difference was more dominant. I think Holloway all around just delivered a once in a lifetime performance, and it was just so one-sided. That I think that's probably the most dominant decision of all time.
Yeah, I would agree too. I'm looking at the scorecards right now between Holloway and Cater. You look at the Twitter verdict, which I like them.
Great people.
Yeah, it was 50 to 42.95. So
that's the global scorecard, yeah.
Huh?
That's the global
scorecard. Yeah, I don't know.
Sure.
I forgot about the exact name.
Yeah.
But that, I don't know, man. And I don't think any. Oh, there we go. Here's the official one. 50-43, 50-43, 50-42. So, yeah. The difference between this one and the Topuria one, the Topuria fight, rather, is the Topuria fight, you had one judge give Emmett a round at least, which was that first round. In this fight, all 3 judges had Holloway winning all 3 rounds. And although there was no 10-7 round, all 3 judges had at least 2 10-8 rounds. And David Lethaby had 3 10-8 rounds. Yeah. So, did you guys see Calvin Kattar's face at the end of that fight too?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, and
it was not a good.
And to go to the striking difference as well, the per rounds are crazy, but just overall significant strikes. Holloway set a record of 445 to Kattar's 133. He almost, he more than triples him, in significant strikes in that fight. And like you said, didn't even come close to winning a round. I think there had to have been at least one, yeah. I think there was knockdown in that fight, although Kattar took you like a champ. That dude has an incredible chin, an incredible heart.
He does.
For sure. He's a guy that I really like, and hope to see him. When was his last fight? Is he
Arnold Allen.
Yeah, he lost to Arnold Allen. Yeah, that was an unfortunate one. That one hurt. And before that, Emmett. So I really would like to see Kattar back soon. We haven't seen him since last October. So hopefully he's recovering well, and hopefully he can come back, because I like him. I think he's a great fighter. I just think Holloway was levels above him that night, and probably the most dominant decision in UFC history for sure. But next, another fight announcement, and we talked about it a little bit, but I was saving it for this segment because it's a little controversial. Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko 2. will be happening. It will be in September, I believe.
September 16th.
September
which is on Mexican
16th.
Independence Day. So that makes sense because, Grasso's Mexican.
Yep.
It's a big night for her.
So it sets up for a big night, but on a fight night. On a fight night. So a title fight on a fight night.
Is it official, though, or is it just speculation?
No, I think it's booked.
No shit.
Almost positive it's booked. And I fact check for me as I continue here, just so I'm not giving any false information out there. But for it to be on a fight night, man. I mean, I obviously it's not big enough to make. It's not a big enough story and headline to main event. But I would absolutely love it as a co-main. I think it'd be a fantastic co-main event for a pay-per-view. And the big issue for me, and maybe I don't know, the situation. Maybe they'll be getting paid monetarily in some other means to make up for the lack of pay-per-view points, which is what I'm getting to, because for pay-per-views, if you're the champion and the challenger and just in general, if you're in that co-main spot, you get pay-per-view points, which is pretty much just money from the pay-per-view. You get a percentage. Which is not a number that's disclosed, but nonetheless, that's more money. For these fighters, because they're on this pay-per-view, because people have to pay to watch you fight, you get a cut of that. And again, it's a small cut because Dana White loves his money. I should just start calling Dana Mr. Krabs because he's really just Mr. Krabs if he was a human being. But nonetheless.
Yeah, one source says it's booked, but when you go on ESPN or anything like that,
it's not yet.
No, so technically it's just rumors for now. But I think that's the direction.
So it's not booked. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I
think that it's being targeted for a fight night. And most of those things, it's not something. I feel like for at least fighting, and I know a lot of other sports, there's reports could be very unreliable, but I feel like for fighting, they usually get it right. When it comes to initial reports and leanings, they usually know things before the UFC announces them. So I think it's going to happen, and I think it's going to be a fight night, and that date makes a lot of sense, like Ian just mentioned. But the fact that there's no pay-per-view points, if I'm just ignorant to the fact that that there's other means of them getting paid for this in terms of to compensate for the lack of pay-per-view, money that they get from it. I'm cool with it. I think it was not taking the fighters' pay involved. I like the fact that you're putting a championship fight in a fight night because why not? Why not give fight fans a free championship bout? It's not something you get very often. It's kind of giving some, and granted you still need ESPN Plus to watch any sort of UFC event, but maybe this is a nationally televised event like we saw on ABC this past weekend. So if it's a nationally televised event as well, I would be all for it, because then you're putting those two women in a big spot as well, because they're now headlining on a main national network channel, main event for a title, and it should be a great fight. It should be a fantastic fight. Stylistically, we saw how that first fight went. Second fight, I think there'll be some adjustments, but it should also be very competitive as well. So I don't mind it for the women's notoriety. And for it being a fight night, but I think the issue of fairness for me would be for the money, and if the money ends up being the same, pay-per-view, non-pay-per-view, I'm with it. But from my understanding, it's not, and that to me would be an issue for two of the most elite women fighter in the world.
Yeah, Joe. It's tough, man. I think this is the first title fight on a fight card since 2020 during the COVID year. I don't know exactly what title fight it was, but I heard it was since 2020. Just double check that for me, please.
Yeah, I got you.
And yeah, man, this fight being honestly, it was a good fight. This was the co-main to obviously John Jones' return back in March. Grasso, she was basically down 2-1 and going into that fourth round, and the way she submitted Shevchenko, who is arguably the second best female fighter of all time, this boosted her stock tremendously. I guess maybe because they're both not, stellar pay-per-view sellers, I could see why it'd be on a fight night. But I just think based off of, how good of a career Shevchenko's had and her name, I think it's almost a little bit of disrespect, personally, to have it on a fight night. I think this should be a co-main to a card. But, I guess, like you mentioned, for money purposes, I'm not totally against having it on the fight night, on a fight night card. But I like the date for it, though, because, it's Mexican Independence Day. That means a lot to Alexa Grasso. I know Yair Rodriguez wanted to fight for the belt and Mexican Independence Day, but when you're not the champ, it's harder to make those shots. It's harder to call those shots rather. But he is fighting on International Fight Week. But Grasso, she has that leverage right now. So I like the date for that fight, the targeted date for that fight rather. So that's my opinion on it. I guess based on circumstances, I'm a little indifferent. But personally, though, I think it should have been another Coleman on a main event on a pay-per-view.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I think it's a two-sided coin, and after doing some diligent research these last 2 minutes, I could not find it. I couldn't find any. I Googled it 4 different ways, in terms of the wording because just a shout out, a non-MMA thing, the wording, the word choice of what you use on Google, big difference on the results you get. Just so people are aware, could help you with some schoolwork if needed. I know it's come up clutch for me personally, but I think I've said my 2 cents. You've said your 2 cents. I don't know. Again, the history is something that we're not sure on. Maybe I'll put a little caption or graphic, just so you guys know at home, and I can get clarification on it later. But for right now, it doesn't look like I'm gonna get it. So I don't think this is the first time. I think that would have made a lot more headlines if it was the first time.
I'm gonna find it.
And he's gonna go back to every single fight card in UFC history just to find it.
No, I'm going back to 2020.
Fair enough. Oh yeah, true. So as he does that, I'm gonna move on, and next week we get one of the most interesting fighters in UFC history. Is he the most outlandish? That is the next question. But Sean Strickland, going up and taking a little bit of a step down in competition, at least rankings-wise, against Abis Magomedov. And that should be a great fight and a great card. But before we get into the card, I got to talk about a video, and we're going to play it right now as well. Sean Strickland, I'll play it over while I'm talking, so you don't need to hear the audio. It's just him yelling at the guys as he's punching Chris Curtis, and I'm not sure who the other guy is.
Yeah, no.
But Sean Strickland, for those who are not sure what I'm talking about, is a big sparring guy. Loves to spar. Has sparred fans off the street. I've seen clips of that as well. Who's one to spar him. And he pieces him up because the dude does not care. He does not care. And more recently, he was documented in a 2v1 sparring versus, obviously, UFC fighter Chris Curtis, like I just mentioned, and another fighter who I'm not sure who it was. Probably another fighter at the gym. Not sure if they're in the UFC. Not sure if they fight somewhere else. It's not something that's, I think, relevant for what we're talking about. But either way, it was a 2v1 sparring session. You have to watch it. Like, I'm showing the clip right now, but you have to watch the full thing because it's absolutely ridiculous. But he looked so good fighting two guys. He was able to stay off the cage, uses his footwork, and pieced up both guys. I think one of the guys was hurt at one point. Like, he actually hit him hard, and he kind of like took like a step back and let the other guy fight so he could like recover from the shot. But it was a crazy video. Not something you would see anyone else do. Something you would only expect out of someone as nuts as Sean Strickland. But is he the most outlandish fighter in the UFC? I know for my answer is going to be yes. But do we have our verdict?
I think it was Benavidez versus Figueiredo, and the lightweight. I'm double checking to see if this was a title fight, but that was a fight night, and I think Figueiredo was the champion there. Let me see. Oh my! I'll be so excited. If I'm wrong, I'm just gonna stop looking it up because I'm gonna get pissed.
Because, see, I remember them fighting. I don't know if that might have been the first fight because I know I watched the second or third fight of them fighting, and that was when Figueiredo just dominated him. Like it was not good. Yeah, but I know that one was a pay-per-view. But I know they fought multiple times, so it wasn't for the belt. Oh, I guess you'll find out right now because ESPN. You just got to go to the history, and it'll show you which type. Drum roll, please, folks. This is fun. I'm honestly, I don't know if this is as fun for those who are watching, so you can just Google it and find it. But for me, at least, yes. Hey, there we go. We got it. No need for the graphic. I'm gonna leave the suspense there.
Oh, they fought twice. Yeah, but Benavidez was a champion. Okay.
Yes, because the second time or the first, I don't know.
Fight nights. Dude, disrespect to both of those. Both of the title fights was on fight night.
Yeah. Men's. Yeah. Again, that's why women's flyweight's goated. The better flyweight, yes, for sure. But back to Sean Strickland. Is he the most outlandish fighter in the UFC? I don't even think it's a question. I put it up there just as a talking point. There's no one who has said more ridiculous things, whether it's an interview while he's training, which I've seen a bunch of those, and they're always so funny, especially with that guy Schmo. Shout out that guy Schmo. I like him.
And his gorgeous wife, and Helen Lee.
Oh, I don't even know who his wife is.
You
But
know
good
Helen
for
Lee?
him.
She's the one who does interviews with Sean Strickland all the time.
Really?
He makes like racist jokes to her about, do you eat a dog or something? He says something stupid like that.
Oh, I didn't know that was his wife. Oh,
That's his
that
wife.
makes sense. That's why. Okay, because I've only ever seen those two interview him at the gym. That makes sense. See, we're learning things here today on today's podcast. Today's podcast is educational. I'm gonna put on YouTube. That's gonna be the caption. Just so you know, it's gonna be UFC, ABC, and some MMA education. But yeah, the more you know, and I love those clips. Are always so funny because again, he's always saying absolutely outlandish stuff.
Oh my gosh! I remember one time he
tweeting crazy stuff.
He said this Kevin Holland wouldn't be upset. He said something to Kevin Holland one time. This was on a pre-fight interview, and he was like, somebody asked him, "Oh, are you and Kevin Holland never gonna fight, or why does Kevin Holland hate you?" And Strickland responded with like, "I think I said something like, I'd rape him in prison one time. That upset him." Like, no shit, that would bother you. But Strickland, what? He just says whatever's on the top of his mind.
And the fact,
stuff.
and he says whatever's on the top of his mind. And there's other people who in the sport that do that as well. But what goes on in his mind is the concerning thing. It's it's like the fact that that's a thought in your brain and then it comes out of your mouth. Everything Sean Strickland says is ridiculous. So it's a Sean Strickland. I will never be not excited for a Sean Strickland fight week. He's not the most flashy fighter in the world, but I think he's better than a lot of people give him credit for. And I think
he was training with Poatan recently too.
Yeah, and I think that's a big reason why I my initial lean would be to Strickland. It's not going to be my bet.
My bet.
For the fight card, but let's dive right into the Strickland versus Makhmedov fight card. It's not one that has too many notable names, especially on the main card. You got a couple guys who are got really talented guys. I'm not sure who Grant Dawson is. I don't know. I'm not familiar with Damir.
He fought Arman Tsurikin in December.
Oh, did he?
Damir Ismagulov. He fought him in I think it was a fight night actually, and he was I think that and no I know it ended in a unanimous decision. It might have been 50-45s across the board or 49-46. Not too sure, but yeah, it wasn't a close fight.
Yeah. Oh, it was only a 3-round. It was the co-main to Cannonier Strickland actually. Look at that.
No shit.
Yeah.
Damn.
There you go.
I guess wherever Ismagulov, wherever Strickland goes, Ismagulov follows.
Literally. Yeah, that was the last time both.
But I like Grant Dawson. I've seen some of his I guess educational or MMA videos on TikTok. He's good. He has good pointers. He hasn't fought though since I think November of last year, something like that. Yeah. I'm not too sure. It was a while ago.
Yeah, and you got a guy in Grant Dawson that's now coming off of 2 straight submission wins and
what is the last loss?
3 straight wins by finish because he has a KO in there as well back in 2021. Last time Grant Dawson has taken a loss.
He's 19-1.
Is not in the UFC.
He hasn't lost
undefeated in the UFC. Good for Grant Dawson. I thought he dropped one early in his UFC career, but I must have been mistaken. Must have been earlier in his career. So you got a guy in Damir Ismagulov that fought a good fight, close fight against Tsurkin. Ended up losing that to be a decision, but still looked good. Grant Dawson, the guy's undefeated in the UFC so far. So this is what I'm talking about. It's a fight card that doesn't have the names, but the talent is there. And the next and the fight before that, you got a young up and comer in Michael Morales who's undefeated as a professional at 14-0 against a guy in Max Griffin who's a veteran of the game, has been in the UFC since 2016. So he's another guy who should give Michael Morales some problems, and Morales is another guy who's I know exactly what you're talking about because that's exactly who I was going to next. But overall, a good main card. But now to the prelims, and our brains are synced up right now because he knows exactly who we're talking about next. And someone I can't believe he's on the prelims, honestly.
I'm surprised.
But welcome back, Kevin Lee.
Welcome
back, Kevin Lee. I'm a big fan of Kevin Lee personally. Shout out his brother as well. I don't know if you know. Do you know about his brother?
He puts like food videos on TikTok.
He's yeah, but he's like like you say it like that, but like if
no,
you actually
I don't
watch
know. I don't really
he's a
watch
cool
him like
guy.
that.
Yeah, his name's Keith, and he's a wholesome dude. And he's just and he was actually once a fighter. I don't know if he's obviously I think with this and Keith Lee went from being Kevin Lee's younger brother to now being way more famous than Kevin Lee will ever be unless he becomes champion one day. Yeah. Honestly, no, that dude Keith Lee's blown up. No, man. He has blown He's up. Blown up. He got like millions of followers. Actually, I knew about him before. I guess before the fame. Oh, shout out me. But he was a guy that's like, he's very wholesome. He does a lot of good things for, a lot of businesses and restaurants. So shout out Keith Lee. What a guy. But let's talk about Kevin, because Kevin is still fighting.
People forget that he was a former interim title challenger, too.
Yes.
He fought Tony Ferguson.
Yes, and he was winning that fight until Tony threw up that
put him in a
triangle
choke.
And that was fantastic. And, he had he's had some big wins in his career. I got to think about that win against Gregor Gillespie where he hit him with that head kick and Gillespie fell
that was against Gillespie?
Yeah, Gillespie, another Long Island guy, unfortunate.
Come on.
But I was rooting for Gregor because I didn't know he was a Long Island guy until the lead up to that fight because he was like riding a big win streak and whatever, and then Kevin Lee put him to sleep and I was like, damn. But I'm a big fan of Kevin Lee. Not too long ago, you only have to go to 2017, which feels like a long time ago now. It is a long time ago, 6 years. Back in October when he lost in round 3. But since then, he had a kind of a rough patch in his career. His last win was against Greg Gillespie in 2019 because after that he lost Oliveira via submission, which was, at the time Oliveira wasn't a crazy loss for Kevin Lee, because it was kind of like a pick'em fight, and this was as Oliveira was ascending. It was kind of early in his like ascension to where he is now in the popularity and just the growth as a fighter. Then he lost in a decision to D-Rod, where D-Rod just looked like the better fighter that night back in 2021. And then after that, Kevin Lee, at the age, I think he was only 28 at the time, was released. And a lot of people were surprised. He went to Eagle FC after that. He had one win there, and then obviously Eagle FC ended up kind of disbanding. Khabib was like, I'm good off that promotional stuff.
Oh, he stopped it, Khabib?
I'm almost positive Eagle FC is no longer a thing.
No, yeah, I don't know if they just didn't
have the funding. Either way, so Kevin Lee, I don't think it's I don't think nope, the domain is gone, so I don't think Eagle FC is a thing anymore. But back to Kevin Lee. So he won a fight in Eagle FC. That was a big signing for that promotion while it lasted. And now he's back in the UFC. And of course, why would the matchmakers feed him anybody easy? Let's feed him a guy who's 2-0 in the UFC and 20-1 in their professional career. And this is quite the name, my friend.
I'm looking at it now.
Rinat Fakhretdinov. Holy smokes! And they have him as an internet personality.
Fakhretdinov. That's not that bad.
Fakhretdinov. Yeah, but who knows if that's right, bro? I mean, who knows if that's correct? Yeah, who knows? Yeah, pronunciation's always a struggle here in MMA on the island. But a guy who's 2-0. And hasn't fought since December of last year, where he beat Brian Battle pretty soundly. So now you're giving Kevin Lee that guy. I mean, I feel like Kevin Lee, 18-7. He's very talented. He was somebody coming into the organization, was very much pushed, and maybe one of those guys, that was pushed maybe a little too soon, a little too quickly, because after that loss to Tony Ferguson, they just kept feeding him beasts. Regional, Edison Barbosa, RDA, and then Gregor Gillespie, Oliveira, D-Rod, all these guys and all these guys, because I'm going back now from 2016 to 2021, you may be thinking maybe a little washed now, but we're talking about these guys in their primes is who Kevin Lee was fighting, and he beat some of them. He kind of, I would say he was probably less than 500, I think, in those like fights against elite competition. But he fought the elite competition and he won a good amount of them. So Kevin Lee, 18-7 as a professional, coming back. The Motown Phenom returns, and I'm really excited to see him fight. I'm pushing for him. I would love to see Kevin Lee get back into the win column because I think it's kind of doing him injustice putting him in the prelims, personally. At least for me.
It is. But I'm not, for the guy Renat, I'm not even trying to say his last name, but Renat, I'll just go with that for now.
Yeah.
Especially with the guys Kevin Lee was fighting, yes, you have to, put inactivity into play. But, Kevin Lee, if you look at the trajectory of his career, he's had a little bit of a downfall, but he wasn't a slouch a couple years ago. So, this guy Renat on the up and coming, I guess Kevin Lee with the name he's had, I'm not totally against that fight. And look how good it looks if you look at it optimistically, right? If Kevin Lee beats this guy Renat, who looks like a monster, maybe you give him a ranked fighter. I don't know if we would go there too soon. But,
or
maybe
close.
That's the start of something new.
Yeah.
Maybe a good start to his second UFC career. So.
Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't even be mad if the UFC did give him a ranked fight.
At 70, though, that's the thing. 70 is stacked.
70 is stacked. I forget that he did move up because he was once fought at 55. So then at 70, maybe he's somebody that, let's say, I was talking about the Jack Della Mandela versus Sean Brady fight later this year. Maybe for Kevin Lee, he fights, if Mandalena ends up losing that fight, maybe you give Kevin Lee him or somebody like that. Somebody who's very close. I don't know. I feel like for Kevin Lee, he's somebody who, and I just said they were pushing him, and maybe that would be pushing him too soon, getting back into the elite competition. But he's somebody that 30 years old, I think could have a career resurgence, and I think it starts this Saturday night, and I'm really excited for it. For me personally, he's my guy. That he's the fighter that I'm gonna, the fighter to watch this week for this card, for sure. But looking at the matchup with Strickland, gotta go to the main event now. Strickland and Magomedov, both guys 32 years old, similar height, similar reach. I think Magomedov has an inch on both of those aspects. But really, not much else, and he's coming off of that front kick KO, the Dagestan native.
He's actually from. Oh, he is, but I think he fights like with Germany or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a guy. I know he's one of those Dagestan guys for sure. It just popped up, but
the last name.
Yeah, it's this the odds. Is this the if you're fighting a guy named Av, you gotta run so far away, but. I like the matchup. I think both guys are it's gonna be a standing match. It's gonna be a kickboxing match essentially, and it's gonna be exciting. I'm excited to see it. And initial leans, I like Strickland. I think I haven't seen enough from Magomedov for me to be confident in picking him to win.
No.
But I think Sean Strickland's so durable. But so I'm not willing to bet on just the fighter because I haven't seen enough of Magomedov for me to put money on it. But what I would say is I would bet on Sean Strickland's toughness, and that is why for my best bet of the weekend, we did end up losing. I thought the Poirier would end via KO, TKO. Decision was the bet, and decision was honestly just the bet to make. Honestly, in hindsight, I was actually looking at it, and I didn't realize the over/under on that fight was only 1.5 rounds for Topuria Emmett.
That was insane.
That would have been the bet of the week. That's just me not doing my due diligence because if I thought it was gonna be like 4.5, 3.5. That's usually where you see the title, not title fights, but main event fights, 5-round fights at. And speaking of this week, 3.5 rounds. I like the over at minus 140, 140. I still think it is good value for 3.5. I think. I was surprised it's not 4.5. I thought it would just be one of those things where it's like decision or not decision, and kind of a coin flip. But 3.5 rounds, I like it. If you can get maybe an alternate line, and go 4.5 or just go to decision, I would maybe look at that. But I wouldn't discount the late finish. So I'm just gonna go with the over 3.5. That's gonna be my bet. We are now sitting at 5-1. After starting out a hot 3-0.
Yeah, I actually like the under.
In our last
I don't think
6
the
picks.
one decision.
Yeah, you like the under? Wow. Okay. Well, we have a little bit of a some differences here for our best bet of the week.
Yeah.
Depending on who you want to listen to.
Because
I think this fight goes to a decision. I do.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? Is I don't think Abus is gonna fight. I don't think he's gonna fight like Strickland very like. Not to say I don't really feel like Strickland's more in your face. Strickland he's He has a weird stance. I mean, he kind of is in your face, but he's not really like super aggressive. I feel like, especially when you watch that fight against Cannonier, which was his 2 fights ago, and then he obviously improved against Imavov back in January. But he isn't one of those guys who's always constant forward pressure like an Oliveira or somebody like that. So I feel like Abis I think he's gonna be on the contrary to that. I think he's gonna be in Strickland's face, and I'm not saying Abis is gonna finish because I think Strickland's gonna finish him, but I just think Strickland's a veteran at this game. I mean, granted, he's 25-4, he has 29 professional fights, but Strickland he's 26-5. He debuted in the UFC at 13-0, so he has 18 fights in the UFC. Abis this is his second, so there's a bit of discrepancy as far as experience between these two athletes. So I don't know. I feel like Strickland's actually going to get a finish here, and I'm just sick and tired of, especially with the middleweight, this guy and Aliskerov, and I mentioned it before. These guys are getting jetpacked all the way to the rankings. Like these guys have one fight in the UFC and they're fighting top 5 guys. Well, Strickland 7, but Cost 5. I don't understand. I don't know if it's because they have exciting debuts. I can name 10 fighters right now who have had exciting debuts. That doesn't mean they fight a top 5 guy in the next fight,
Yeah.
So I just feel like this might be too soon, but we'll see. I mean, again, this guy is 32 years old, so he's not that young. But, usually I feel like for fighters, their prime is their late 20s, early 30s. So, I could be wrong. And I could be eating my words, and we could have this conversation on Monday, and Abis either dominates him on the scorecard or finishes him. But me personally, just looking at these two guys, I think Strickland's gonna get a finish.
Yeah. I don't agree. I do think Strickland's gonna win the fight, and now that I'm looking at Abis's career a little bit, I was just going through his fights, and if you think Magomedov could get the victory, I would like it by stoppage, and I would even, if you really want to go with a big, 'cause I'm sure it'd be big plus money, it'd be a submission. He has 6 submission wins. 2 of his last wins before joining the UFC was via submission. It was a guillotine and a Kimura for 2 different organizations, because he did lose his last fight in PFL in 2018 via knockout, which is why I could see him getting finished by Sean Strickland. But I think that and this is the longest that Abis has to fight. He's only ever fought 3 rounds, 15 minutes. So he's gonna have to fight 25. That's why I feel that if it does get over that 3.5 mark, I would like Sean Strickland to win.
Wait, PFL's the same. They don't have 5 rounds. PFL.
Because
he fought in the championship.
He's never. He fought in the championship, but he got knocked out in the first round. So he's never made it through 25 minutes.
Gotcha.
So I think that if he does make it through 25 minutes, I can't see him getting his hand raised. But I think if this fight does end in stoppage, at least for me, and we have a difference in opinion, and that's just that. I think Magomedov would get the finish, and I would even look, if you wanna take a risk, because it would be a big plus money bet. I'm sure of it, for submission. But I mean, at least for me, I think that's gonna do it for this fight. Unless you have something else to add to that Strickland Abis Magomedov fight. It's a fight that the more I talk about, the more excited I am for it.
I was trying to see what time this fight's at. It's at 7, so it's not too early.
So it's not too early. Thank goodness, and
3 p.m.
the main event being at 5 was ridiculous, but the main card starting at 7, main event will be around 9:30.
Yeah,
I like
that.
That's honestly perfect for me. Then you can get the night.
Saturday?
Going from there on Saturday. I do work Saturday, unfortunately. I'm not going to tell you where I work because I don't want to get a place any more business. But either way, that is going to do it for episode number 6. Again, almost running out of fingers here. We're almost there.
We're getting close. We have 4 more fingers. Maybe I have to start using my hands.
Yeah,
too.
there you go.
10,
yeah, let's do that. Let's keep that going.
Let's do it.
But episode 6 in the books. Another exciting one, and one where I think if I'm not mistaken, we've done it once again. We're back on it. 2 hours.
2 hours?
2 hours. We've reached over the 2-hour mark. And I thought that was at least one of my most enjoyable podcasts for sure to film. I had a great time. As always, Aiden, and as always with you, Bob, although you don't like to say anything. But he's looking chiseled. Although he may have passed his prime, Bob, but he's still looking good nonetheless. But that's it for us. I hope you guys enjoy the fights this weekend. It's a good card. Don't sleep on this card. And hopefully, our previews got you a little more excited, because it got me a lot more excited for this week's fight card. So that's going to do it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And next week, hopefully, when you see us next, big changes. If not, we'll continue to be going on. But hopefully, some big changes next week. Looking forward to episode 7. But that concludes episode 6. I hope you guys enjoyed. Enjoy the fights, and we'll see you guys next week. Take care, fight fans.